Chapter 26. Jane, Fankel, and Ariel's expressions crumbled. They were just ordinary people. Even if Varian Marx said that they shared the same bloodline, it was impossible. But in the end, they had only been exposed to supernatural things for 2 to 3 days. They had been completely trapped in the fog for the past 2 to 3 days. They did not have any contact with the outside world. Not long ago, a large group of spiritualists suddenly appeared outside and walked through the fog without any scruples. They had thought that their chance to leave had come. They did not expect that these spiritualists would not only come in by themselves. They would not let others leave. This made the two of them feel despair. Were all these people crazy? Even if they were here to slay dragons, they should not stop them from leaving. They are now cleaning up the strange dragons in the fog and trying to seal off the information here. I really don't understand what they are trying to do, Zephyr said. Don't they know that these strange dragons can't be cleaned up? Varian asked in confusion. These strange dragons were not living creatures. They were the physical manifestation of Hobart Morhaber's power. Hobart Morhaber could create as many strange dragons as he wanted. I can understand if an idiot does something so stupid. But if more than 1,000 people do the same thing, then we are the idiots. Maybe we don't know what they are trying to do. What do they do after killing the strange dragons? Collect the remains of the strange dragons, including their blood and eyeballs. Are these things very valuable in the spiritual world? Maybe they are used for other purposes. Can you guess what they are trying to do? There's no need to guess. They will attack the manor tonight. We will know then. More than 1,000 spiritualists were comparable to a modern army. Even if they were not using firearms. But they were almost like the superpowers in the X-Men. Hobart Morhaber's domain could not be strong enough to withstand the attack of more than 1,000 spiritualists. Therefore, these more than 1,000 spiritualists had almost effortlessly attacked Max's manor. The Dragon Slayer team led by Varian and Zephyr also followed the rest of the troops into Max's manor. Jane, Fankel, and Ariel found that in just a few days, the place seemed to be filled with strange plants. These plants looked abnormally twisted and did not look like normal living things. Don't get close to these plants, they will, Just as Varian reminded Jane, Fankel, and Ariel, a blood-curdling scream came from afar. A spiritualist who did not understand the dangers of the plants reached out to touch a draconic tree. In the end, the dragon blood tree opened a bloody mouth and bit off the spiritualist's wrist. As dragon slayers, Varian and Zephyr were well aware of the dangers of the dragon blood plants. These dragon blood plants were all cultivated with the blood of the dragon clan. After coming into contact with the dragon's blood, most of them would immediately wither and die. However, a small number of plants will mutate. For example, the dragon blood tree had a huge mouth. This was considered child's play. Some dragon blood plants even possess certain characteristics of the dragon race. That was the most dangerous dragon blood plant. As expected, more cases of the dragon blood plants attacking the spiritualists appeared one after another. However, facing a large number of spiritualists, the attacking dragon blood plants were quickly destroyed. Chen Zhao was frustrated. There was no news from Zephyr at all. On the other hand, he could not get any news from his side. This made him even more frustrated. Chen Zhao planned to find a place to vent his frustration. In reality, there weren't many places where Chen Zhao could vent his frustrations. Thus, he chose the Tower of Trials. He hadn't been to the Tower of Trials in a while. He had passed the 9th level. However, he did not enter the 10th level. This was because the handsome guy had once said that the difficulty of the Tower of Trials would increase exponentially with each level he went up. Last time, Chen Zhao had brought more Raz to the 9th level. If he teamed up, the difficulty would increase again. When he entered the 9th level alone, he was only a dragon. However, after teaming up with more Raz, he became a 3-headed dragon. The difficulty of 3 dragons was not 3 times higher, but at least 5 times higher. Chen Zhao had improved a lot since the last time he passed the 9th level. He was confident that he could pass the 10th level. Chen Zhao went to the headquarters, planning to find someone to team up with. It should not be difficult to pass the 10th level alone. Just as Qin Zhao was thinking about who to bring in, he saw Lindsay Beyonce sitting on the grass with a wretched expression. "Hey, Lindsay, what are you doing? It's none of your business." Lin Beyonce's attitude was still as rude as before. "How about going to the Tower of Trials with me? I barely passed the first level alone. It'll be much more difficult if I team up. I don't want to die with you." Lindsay had heard from her friends how powerful Qin Zhao was every now and then, but she had never seen it with her own eyes. But she hadn't seen it with her own eyes, so she thought it was just Qin Zhao's subordinates bragging. She had experienced the Tower of Trials many times. She knew how difficult the Tower of Trials was. "Don't you want to go to the top level? I'll take you there." "I don't want to. If you want to die, you can do it yourself." Lin Beyonce refused without hesitation. "That's not up to you." Qin Zhao grinned. "What can you do if I don't go?" The next moment, Lindsay realized that Qin Zhao could really do anything without her permission. She couldn't do anything about it. She realized that she was bound. Not only was his body bound by an invisible hand, but his body was also restrained. Her body was also floating. "You asterisk shoal, what do you want?" "Team up with me, of course." "Fine, fine. Let go of me and I'll agree." "Damn asterisk shoal." Only then did Qin Zhao let go of Beyonce. "Since you want to die, why drag me with you? How did I offend you?" Lindsay didn't think about running. She couldn't escape anyway, so she might as well be stubborn. It was just dying once. It was no big deal. "Because your attitude pisses me off." The two teamed up and entered the first level of the Tower of Trials. "Hurry and find a good position. Don't let the monsters surround us. Otherwise, it'll be hard for us to escape." It seemed that it wasn't Lindsay's first time teaming up. She was very experienced, and immediately told Qin Zhao where to stand. 9 Heavens Divine King. Chapter 26-27. Leonard Beyonce yelled. "You idiot! I shouldn't have agreed to your request." Qin Zhao looked at the first layer of monsters surrounding him. These were the monsters of their team. They were many times stronger than solo players. Even in solo mode, it was hard to escape when surrounded by monsters. Unless it was someone with a strong body like Gaia or Genkira, who could take a few rounds of damage. Or someone with agility and speed like Engelit and Dongye Tianxi. But Qin Zhao really didn't look like someone who could escape from this kind of encirclement. Also, from the way he controlled himself, he should be a control-type spell. Could it be that this fellow had dragged him in just to let him die once? This asterisk shoal. The monsters had completely surrounded her. Lin Beyonce covered her eyes. It should be soon. Just a moment of pain and then it would be over. It wasn't Lindsay's first time experiencing this. When she'd first joined the supernatural organization, she'd been thrown into the Tower of Trials directly. So, the feeling of being killed in the Tower of Trials wasn't unfamiliar at all. But the pain and torture she'd been waiting for didn't come. Instead, she received the notification that she'd passed. Stunned, Lindsay put down her hands and realized that the monsters around her had all disappeared. What just happened? Lin Beyonce looked at Qin Zhao in confusion. Unfortunately, Qin Zhao didn't give her a satisfactory answer. Then, Lindsay entered the second level of the Tower of Trials in team mode for the first time. This time, Lindsay wasn't as agitated and flustered as she'd been in the first level. Instead, she looked at Qin Zhao with a confused expression. She wanted to see what he was going to do next. Once again, the monsters surrounded him in a dense crowd. Qin Zhao remained expressionless as he calmly looked at the monsters surrounding him. Lin Beyonce was so nervous that she was about to explode. But Qin Zhao was still unmoved. He watched as the monsters got closer and closer. Qin Zhao finally raised his hand. He extended 2 fingers from his right hand and pressed down. Whoosh! At that moment, Lycée Beyonce was blinded by blood. Everything was dyed red. All the monsters, hundreds and thousands of them, were crushed into meat paste in an instant. Blood splattered everywhere. All of a sudden, Lin Beyonce was furious. Everyone's hair stood on end. She felt as if her breathing was about to stop. It was so painful that he couldn't breathe. All of them were painstakingly fighting against these monsters. But Qin Zhao only used 2 fingers to stop the battle? Then came the 3rd layer, and the result was the same. 4th floor, 5th floor, 6th floor, 7th floor, 8th floor. Lin Beyonce felt that Qin Zhao might have mastered some kind of bug. That was why he was able to clear the stage so easily. Yes, that's right, it must be a bug. Finally, he reached the 9th floor. Qin Zhao was not too surprised. 3 dragons. When the 3 dragons appeared before Qin Zhao, Beyonce found it hard to breathe again. The overwhelming pressure made it hard for her to breathe. Facing an enemy of this level, Qin Zhao's small world's gravity was useless. Dragons' physical and magic resistance were basically at the pinnacle of all creatures. Putting aside the special existences of certain species, they were the strongest creatures. Qin Zhao looked at the 3 dragons. The 3 dragons immediately began to attack in a frenzy. Move away! Don't let the dragon blood touch you. It'll be troublesome. Lin Beyonce couldn't move at all. She couldn't move under the pressure of the 3 dragons. Forget it. Qin Zhao walked forward. The next moment, Qin Zhao's figure suddenly disappeared from the spot. The next moment, a dragon fell from the sky. However, the way he landed was not a normal landing. He fell with a crooked neck. Qin Zhao was on the dragon's crooked neck. Just now, Qin Zhao had broken the dragon's neck with 1 kick. Then he looked up at the 2 dragons in the sky. Qin Zhao lifted his hands and pulled hard. Get down! Qin Zhao's small world's gravity couldn't crush them to death. But it was still powerful enough to pull them down from the sky. However, to Qin Zhao's surprise, he only managed to pull down 1 dragon. The other dragon was the largest. He actually managed to control his body and didn't fall right in front of Qin Zhao. Qin Zhao didn't mind. Hundreds of small black balls appeared around Qin Zhao. It directly hit the body of the falling dragon. In an instant, the giant dragon was riddled with holes. Qin Zhao's gaze landed on the large dragon at the end. He condensed another 100 small black balls. The dragon was terrified by Qin Zhao's power, but it didn't panic. However, he did not panic. Instead, he formed a barrier around him. Bang, 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 the deafening sound reverberated continuously. The small black balls collided with the barrier. Qin Zhao's black balls actually didn't break through the barrier. This surprised Qin Zhao. This dragon was clearly much stronger than the 2 he'd killed before. Just then, huge stone spikes appeared around the dragon in the sky and shot toward Qin Zhao. Qin Zhao was surprised. This dragon's combat power and attributes were similar to his. It was a weaker version of himself. Lin Beyonce was dumbfounded. Was this the president that she thought was just messing around all day? To be honest, in Lin Beyonce's eyes, Qin Zhao was a messing around president. Sometimes she even suspected that West had made Qin Zhao a mere figurehead. Because in the supernatural organization, West could give all orders. On the other hand, Qin Zhao was more like air. In the organization, West was more like a president. Ever since she joined the organization, she'd participated in almost 20 battles, big and small. But Qin Zhao hadn't participated in any of them. This was also why Lin Beyonce always looked down on Qin Zhao. It was hard for anyone to respect such an air person. But now, Qin Zhao seemed to be a different person. At the same time, she also understood that Qin Zhao didn't need to participate in those battles. What was the point of shooting a mosquito with a cannon? Qin Zhao looked at the dragon in the sky. The dragon seemed to sense danger, and immediately flapped its wings to fly into the sky. A small black ball condensed in Qin Zhao's hand and shot toward the dragon. The power of the small black ball was 100 times greater than the power of the small world condensed before. Boom! A ripple exploded in the sky. The terrifying power sent the dragon flying thousands of meters away and smashing into the ground. Chapter 26-28. The dragon was heavily injured. Chen Zhao immediately pounced. Just then, the dragon flipped over. Its limbs were on the ground, and it roared. Earth spikes shot up from the ground. Chen Zhao didn't care about them at all. Even when the spikes stabbed him, he ignored them. In the blink of an eye, Chen Zhao had already reached the dragon. The dragon hurriedly covered itself with a layer of rocks. But Chen Zhao still ignored it and punched. Rocks flew and blood splattered everywhere. Their attacks were very similar. Therefore, at this time, the deciding factor for victory or defeat was pure strength. Facing Chen Zhao's overwhelming strength, the dragon couldn't fight back at all. "I surrender! I surrender!" the dragon roared. "I'm willing to worship you as my master." But Chen Zhao didn't plan on showing mercy. After all, he already had a dragon as a pet. Even if Abitos was still a young dragon. But this had nothing to do with him being an adult. Chen Zhao didn't need a second dragon as a pet. But the dragon's defense was indeed shocking. At least, it didn't die under Chen Zhao's punches. Even if Chen Zhao didn't use his full strength. Even an aircraft carrier would be smashed into scrap metal if these punches were to land on it. However, this dragon was still alive and kicking. At least, Chen Zhao didn't give it a fatal injury. Something was wrong. Something was wrong with this guy. He could actually take my punches that weighed 1,000,000 tons. Even though each of my punches made his skin split open. He didn't seem as heavily injured as Chen Zhao had imagined. But in the eyes of others, it was a one-sided slaughter. In the distance, Lindsay Beyonce watched as Chen Zhao killed the dragon with each punch. She almost peed her pants. Chen Zhao realized that he really couldn't kill the dragon in his normal state. At least, he needed a long time to kill it. Chen Zhao finally stopped. The dragon was in pain too. After all, he was willing to be his grandson. He was actually thinking about how to kill him. If not for his thick skin, he would probably be a pile of meat now. He would probably be a pile of rotten meat now. In fact, apart from the beginning, Chen Zhao had seriously thought about killing the dragon. In the end, Chen Zhao was a bit angry. He just wanted to see how many punches the dragon could take. He had to admit that the dragon was really tough. "Alright, you've won my interest." He had never said this to anyone else. But now, he said such a sentence to a giant dragon. "Tell me, why are you able to withstand my fist, and I'll let you live. Sign a master-servant contract with me first." The dragon was really worried that Chen Zhao would kill it after knowing the truth. He knew that the human in front of him had the ability to kill him. It was more troublesome to kill someone in the boxing ring. You had to punch your opponent to death. That was not an easy thing to do. But in the arena, killing someone wasn't as simple as a fist. The reason why this human didn't kill him was because he was interested in him. But once this point disappeared, with how cruel this human was, would he spare his own life? "How do I sign it?" Chen Zhao knew the general steps, but he didn't know the details. At that moment, the dragon drew a magic circle on the ground with its claws and dripped a drop of its blood into the magic circle. "You can also drip a drop of blood into it. After that, you will receive a spiritual resonance. You just need to accept this spiritual resonance." Chen Zhao wasn't worried that the dragon would play tricks. Of course, the dragon didn't play any tricks either. During the spiritual resonance, Chen Zhao found out that this guy was called Saboni's Angel Haber. Unlike his demon servants, Chen Zhao couldn't ask for too much even though they were inferior to Chen Zhao. But Saboni's was different. He was a complete servant, a slave. This meant that Chen Zhao could ask for anything other than suicide. Saboni's couldn't disobey any of Chen Zhao's orders. Chen Zhao also found out from Saboni's spiritual communication. Saboni's was an earth elemental dragon, but he was different from other earth elemental dragons. He was better at physical attacks. Moreover, the skills he developed weren't pure magic. Most of them were physical attacks that were modified with earth elemental magic. Of course, these physical attacks still had magic elements. The reason why his skin was so thick was also explained. He shifted Chen Zhao's attacks to the ground. For example, The first time Qin Zhao blasted him down from the sky, he was severely injured. But after that, Qin Zhao punched him over 100 times, but the damage wasn't as much as the previous one. At the same time that they signed the contract, Qin Zhao and Lindsay Beyonce also received the notification that they had passed. Sabonis wasn't a unit. He was only Qin Zhao's pet and part of Qin Zhao's combat power. Therefore, the difficulty wouldn't increase because of him. Lin Beyonce was very nervous at this moment. She followed Qin Zhao to the 10th floor. Sabonis was still a bit dull. He didn't know that he was in the Tower of Trials. He even thought that he was in a complete world. The moment Qin Zhao reached the 10th floor, his expression changed slightly. "Sabonis, protect this little guy," Qin Zhao said seriously. There would be a huge battle next. This was because Qin Zhao could already sense 12 terrifyingly powerful auras approaching them from the front. The owners of the 12 auras were all giant dragons. But they weren't ordinary adult dragons. They were 12 dragons at the level of dragon fathers. Soon, Sabonis also sensed that the 12 terrifying auras were approaching him. "Master, run!" Qin Zhao didn't run. Instead, he stood there expressionlessly. Around him, 12 small black balls started forming. Level 1 and 2 of the primordial regression technique. Lindsay Beyonce looked at Qin Zhao, who wasn't far away. He seemed to be preparing to run. "What's he doing? Is he preparing for a 100-meter sprint?" Lindsay Beyonce asked, pointing at Qin Zhao's back, confused. "What's a 100-meter sprint?" Sabonis asked, confused. He also found Qin Zhao's action strange, but he was more curious about the 100-meter sprint. After all, he'd been trapped on the 9th floor his entire life and didn't know the outside world at all. Qin Zhao took a deep breath and kept staring into the distance. "It's here!" 9 black dots appeared in the distant sky. Because they were too far away, he could only see 9 dots. Qin Zhao still didn't move. He continued to observe. If he could sense them, they could definitely sense him too. Qin Zhao didn't have an advantage in terms of perception. Plus, they were 12 giant dragons. And he was just one person. Therefore, Qin Zhao didn't plan on a sudden attack. It was meaningless. Qin Zhao had his own plans. Chapter 26-29. It was a pistol that could shoot 100 meters away. Shooting from 100 meters away and shooting from 10 meters away were two different concepts. A well-trained soldier would have a short time to react if he was targeted from 100 meters away. But if he was targeted from 10 meters away, he could dodge. Right now, Qin Zhao was a bullet. A loaded bullet was about to be fired. Qin Zhao watched as the 12 dragons approached. He tore open the air. The terrifying airflow almost made Lin Beyonce lose her balance. In the blink of an eye, Qin Zhao had disappeared. The moment the 12 dragons approached, Qin Zhao had already locked onto a target. It was a golden dragon. Qin Zhao's strategy was simple. He just had to go all out. Using his advantage in speed, Qin Zhao crashed into the golden dragon. The golden dragon drew a beautiful arc in the air and fell with Qin Zhao. The other 11 dragons wanted to come and help, but 11 of the 12 black balls around Qin Zhao shot at them. Only a small black ball was still circling around Qin Zhao. Before the golden dragon could react, Qin Zhao pried open the dragon's mouth and stuffed the black ball inside. Destroying any enemy from the inside had always been the most effective way to defeat them. Even dragons were no exception. The golden dragon's surface was covered in a gold-like substance. They had a defense that was far superior to other creatures, and even far superior to other dragons. But their internal structure wasn't much stronger than other dragons. Boom! Large amounts of dragon blood spurted out of the golden dragon's mouth, nose, and ears. Then, the golden dragon lowered its head and rolled on the ground a few times. It flapped its wings a few times and then stopped moving. Lin Beyonce and Sabonis were dumbfounded. Qin Zhao killed one just like that? It was especially so for Sabonis. He knew that even the smallest of the 12 WIRMs was 10 times bigger than him. He knew how terrifying their strength was. How much stronger were those dragons than you? Maybe a dozen like me can't beat any of them, Sabonis answered after a moment of hesitation. Then how did he kill one in such a short time? Holding the dragon head, Chen Zhao stuffed it into his spatial ring. Although there were as many dragons as one wanted, there were not many dragons at the level of the Dragon Father. In the real world, Qin Zhao killing a Dragon Father would cause a huge uproar. There was even a strong backlash from the dragon race. But here, no one knew. Moreover, it was not something that could be done just by drinking a mouthful of water to kill a Dragon Father-level dragon. Since one of their companions was killed, the other Dragon Fathers and giant dragons were naturally unhappy. They were not below the 9th floor of the training tower, they were created by the rules of the training tower. The 9th floor and the checkpoints above the 9th floor were all filled with real life. Therefore, if they didn't kill one, they would really die. Qin Zhao kicked off the ground and shot out. However, none of the remaining 11 dragons that were at the level of Dragon Father were easy to deal with. Even Qin Zhao would not be able to win easily against a dragon of the same level as the Dragon Father. Phantom! Right at this moment, a relatively smaller giant dragon uttered a cry in the dragon language. Its body flashed, and 5 identical giant dragons appeared. I see you! Qin Zhao targeted the first one and pounced at it. But in the end, his punch missed and hit the air. On the other hand, Qin Zhao's phantom, who was free, slapped him with a dragon claw. Qin Zhao flipped a dozen times in the air. Just then, the second wave of attacks came. A fire dragon shot a super sun at Qin Zhao from behind. Before the super sun, Qin Zhao was as small as an ant. The super sun swallowed Qin Zhao in an instant. Qin Zhao also felt the horrifying heat. But at the same time, Qin Zhao felt his blood boil like never before. At the moment, Lindsay Beyonce watched the battle in the sky in astonishment. Is this a war between dragons? No, that's not a war between dragons, Sabonis said helplessly. Regular dragons can't fight like that. For example, I don't even have the right to get close. The super sun in the distance suddenly exploded. Qin Zhao stood unscathed in the center of the explosion. No, not unscathed. Because right now, Qin Zhao's body was also burning with flames. The battle between the 11 dragons and Qin Zhao was intense. It wasn't an earth-shattering battle, but it was close. Your boss looks like he's at a disadvantage. Lindsay Beyonce was actually a bit worried. But she didn't say it. Instead, she glanced at Sabonis, who had been protecting her with his wings. Sabonis actually didn't care about Lindsay's life or death. But since his boss said so, he had to obey. Sabonis shook his head. Didn't you notice? My master looks like he's being attacked, but he's not injured. Lindsay Beyonce was stunned. How was that possible? It was such a fierce battle and such crazy attacks. How could he not be injured? Yes, he's not injured, which means that the 11 Dragon Fathers can't hurt my master, and my master can kill any one of them at any time. Therefore, the direction of this battle will be that the 11 Dragon Fathers will be killed by my master one by one. It was as if Sabonis had made a premonition of death. Just like he'd said, the battle was going on in this manner. Qin Zhao was indeed uninjured. Then, he killed the dragons one by one. It wasn't as easy as the first golden dragon. But it wasn't so difficult that Qin Zhao couldn't do it. Qin Zhao still walked his own path. When you don't hurt me, I have many choices how to hit you. These Dragon Fathers had lived for at least 1,000 years. But they'd never met such a difficult opponent. But there was one thing that they were stronger than Sabonis. That was their tenacity and courage. At least, when there were only 3 dragons left, they didn't cower. They still fought Qin Zhao bravely until the last moment. Qin Zhao could tell that they hadn't lost their minds. They were just looking at death calmly. That was all. Qin Zhao stretched and looked up at the sky. He was considering if he should go to the 11th level in one go. He just fought against the 12 dragons at the same level. Qin Zhao hadn't used his full strength. He'd only used the 2nd level of the primordial regression technique and kept the 3rd level. How big was the difference between the 9th and 10th level? It wasn't a difference that could be described by multiples. There were 3 regular dragons on the 9th level, but there were 12 dragons at the same level as the Dragon Fathers on the 10th level. It was 4 times more than that. Chapter 2630. The 10th floor was more than 100 times harder than the 9th floor. If the difficulty increased according to this, then the difficulty of the 11th level would be 100 times that of the 10th level. And how much could the 3rd level of Qin Zhao's primordial regression technique increase his battle power? At most, it wouldn't exceed 30 times. Ever since Qin Zhao used the Divine Power Potion, Qin Zhao's combat ability, from basic to advanced techniques, had all improved. Even without activating the 2nd level of the primordial regression technique, his battle prowess was already equivalent to that of the past. And after activating the 2nd level of the primordial regression technique, his battle prowess was close to the 3rd level of the primordial regression technique. The 3rd level was several times stronger than before. Qin Zhao's level didn't increase. But Qin Zhao's combat power increased very quickly. At the very least, Qin Zhao was confident that if he encountered another gathering of demon lords like last time, he wouldn't have to flee so pathetically. He couldn't guarantee that he would be able to kill a few of the enemy greater demon overlords, but he could at least guarantee that the enemy wouldn't be able to obtain any benefits. If the opponent was just a demon lord, Qin Zhao had a 90% chance of killing him. However, he didn't have the confidence to face more than one greater demon lord. This was because every greater demon overlord had their own trump cards and life-saving trump cards. So, Qin Zhao had to fight against 2 or more demon lords. Basically, all he could do was protect himself. If he was lucky, it wouldn't be a problem to kill 1 or 2 of them. Qin Zhao was confident in normal methods. However, every greater demon lord had a nuclear switch in their hands. Qin Zhao was not afraid of a demon lord's nuclear weapon. But even Qin Zhao wouldn't feel good if he was hit by one. After all, when the greater demon overlord had been building a party, the demon overlord had not been able to do so. After being shot by Qin Zhao's nuclear weapon, most of the demon lords were sent to meet Lucifer. So, in terms of regular combat power, Qin Zhao could chase after a large group of demon lords and stab them in the ass. But if 2 great demon lords came and threw the nuclear switch in front of him, he would also be terrified. It was precisely because Qin Zhao had his own nuclear weapons that he knew how scary they were. If he faced 10 great demon lords on the Trial Tower's 11th floor, he wouldn't be able to survive. Qin Zhao was probably going to die. Thus, after much consideration, he decided to give up on the 11th floor for now. According to the increase in difficulty, the 11th level would probably be 100 times more difficult than the 10th level. If there was another Lord's gathering, Qin Zhao would break down and want to kill himself. Thus, in order to clear the Trial Tower's 11th floor, the first thing to do was not to increase one's combat power. It was resistance. Qin Zhao was even considering if he should use some channels to create something that could cause a world war. Then, he could find a quiet place to play. To be honest, this idea was scary, but it also made Qin Zhao's heart race. Qin Zhao finished off the 12 Dragon Fathers, leaving nothing behind. Then he landed before Lindsay Beyonce and Sabonis. Now, Lin Beyonce could no longer face Qin Zhao as arrogantly as before. She would never think of such a stupid idea again. Seized by West? Ha! West's old bones couldn't even withstand one of Qin Zhao's fingers. Sometimes, the so-called seizing of power was based on the fact that the 2 sides were equal in strength. However, when the strength of the 2 sides in the game was not on the same level, it could only be regarded as authorization. You can have what I give you. You can't take it if I don't give it to you. However, when a giant dragon appeared in the headquarters of the supernatural organization, many people were shocked. Everyone stared at Sabonis as if they were facing a great enemy. But when they saw Qin Zhao, they all heaved a sigh of relief. All of them together couldn't handle an adult dragon, but Qin Zhao was different. Even if 100 dragons came, Qin Zhao could take them all. When they realized that the dragon was Qin Zhao's pet, they were even less surprised. Anyway, they all knew that Qin Zhao's family already had a young dragon. It seemed to be called a Betos. It was still very young. At least to an adult dragon, a Betos was about the size of a lizard. But to a normal person, it was basically a monster. Sabonis, can you turn into a human? Human? Why are you in human form? Chen Zhao and Sabonis had a spiritual resonance. As long as their spiritual powers were connected, they could communicate directly. Just do it when I tell you to. Stop talking. Qin Zhao did not have a good attitude towards Sabonis. Most people would find it hard to cherish someone who threw themselves at them. For example, Chen Zhao would grant a Betos everything at home. He practically raised a Betos like a son. As for Sabonis, Chen Zhao basically raised him like a dog. Master, I can't change. I don't know how. President, the dragon transformation magic came from humans, West said. They can't turn into humans naturally. Is that so? I thought that when dragons become adults and are strong enough, they can turn into humans directly. Everyone rolled their eyes. Did Chen Zhao think that dragons could turn into humans naturally just because they had nothing better to do? But that's troublesome. The airport construction site is not far away. It's too obvious for such a big guy to run around. How big was Sabonis? Lying on the ground, he was about 3 stories tall at his highest point. From head to tail, he was at least 155 meters tall. With such a huge body, if outsiders approached, they would not be able to hide. Chen Zhao rubbed his chin. If outsiders saw Sabonis, it would definitely be big trouble. It would be great if he could cut him into pieces and store him. Master, I can turn into a small mountain, Sabonis said immediately. Qin Zhao forgot that he was still in a spiritual connection with Sabonis. Sabonis would be able to sense what he was thinking at the first moment. To avoid being cut into pieces and kept by Qin Zhao, Sabonis definitely had to speak first. Wasn't it just hiding? How hard could it be? You could choose whatever shape you wanted. There would definitely be one that suited your taste. Sabonis knew how cruel his master was. He had torn the 12 dragon fathers into pieces. He did not think that he could fight Qin Zhao head-on. Even without the restriction of the contract, he did not dare to be a traitor. However, Qin Zhao did not realize that Sabonis could really turn into a small mountain. More accurately, he could turn his body into stone. Curled up, Sabonis was really like a small mountain. Chapter 2631. It's Chinese New Year tomorrow, Qin Zhao said. Ruan, you'll be in charge of making some magic tools as gifts for our members, Qin said. President, Chinese New Year is a holiday for you Chinese, is there a problem? Qin Zhao turned to look at Ruan. Okay, no. Ruan immediately admitted defeat. But guild leader, what quality do you think I should give? What quality can you make? And it can be mass-produced. President, any magic tool that can be made can be mass-produced, even divine artifacts. But those that can aren't anything good. Why? Since technology isn't the problem, materials become the biggest problem, Ruan said. Even if the supernatural organization has a lot of dragon materials, it's not practical to mass-produce magic tools. It's even more troublesome to make magic tools that are mainly made of other materials, Ruan Faxben said. I killed a few more dragons earlier. Is it enough to make a magic tool with dragon bodies as the main material? How many? 15. 12 of them are high level. They're at the level of Dragon Father. Ruan Faxben gasped. He knew Qin was terrifying, but killing 12 dragons at the level of the Dragon Father still shocked him. President, the materials from Dragon Father dragons are indeed high level. They can even be used to make divine artifacts, but we don't have enough time to make such high-level magic tools. Didn't you say that we can mass-produce them as long as we have enough materials? Yes, but we still need time. How much time? I can only make 2 per day. So little? President, that's if we have a clear idea. We can only make 2 a day after the first magic tool is made, Ruan said helplessly. Ruan Faxi said helplessly. For a non-standard magic tool, you must first have a clear direction, then try, and then stop. Tell me, how much time do you need? President, tell me first. What kind of magic tool do you want to make? Of course it's to increase our people's combat power and self-defense. Chen Zhao's request was simple: power. It could be used by the supernatural organization to strengthen and equip themselves. It's very simple, and it's not difficult to design. But still, time. How long? The design will take at least half a month. Chen shook his head. That's too long. Guild leader, it's impossible to be any faster. What if I have a ready-made blueprint? It also depends on the difficulty, Ruan said. Forget it, I don't need your help. I'll find another alchemist myself. Chen waved his hand. Ruan smiled bitterly. President, unless you can find the world's best alchemist. Chen was not familiar with Wendy, the top alchemist in the human world. But Chen could find it in hell. He wouldn't dare to say that he was the #1 alchemist, but he could at least find an alchemist on par with Wendy. Phoenix Nightag's alchemy level was no worse than Wynn's. Help me keep an eye on that dragon. If he does anything wrong, inform me immediately. Chen also had to go home to prepare for Chinese New Year's Eve. Varian Marx and Zephyr's team followed behind the rest of the team. Max Manor seemed to be defenseless. Over 1,000 spiritualists charged into Max's manor. Then, they went straight in and took care of a few small problems. After finding a secret passage, they entered it one after another. However, the passage was like a maze, full of twists and turns. Varian Marx and Zephyr's team also took a different path. Fankel, there's such a huge space under your house. I didn't know there was such a huge maze under the manor. Jane Fankel followed behind the team in silence. As a matter of fact, it wasn't that Jane Fankel didn't know about the maze. When she was very young, she had entered it by mistake. Fortunately, her father found her at the entrance of the labyrinth. Later on, Jane Fankel found a map hidden in her father's study. The maze was not just a flat surface. It was a 3-dimensional maze with many layers from top to bottom. With her super memory, she remembered every corner and dead end in the maze. Of course, she also knew the correct route. Zephyr glanced at Jane Fankel behind her. Are you a member of this family too? Is there a problem? Jane Fankel raised her head and looked at Zephyr. Although Zephyr looked younger than her daughter, she suspected that Zephyr was the same as Varian Marx. However, she suspected that Zephyr was the same as Varian Max, an old monster who looked young but was actually hundreds of years old. No, there's no problem. Zephyr shook her head. Haber Timur Haber has many descendants in this world. According to the information I received, there were 3 families in history that were no smaller than the Marx family. These families were seeds that Haber Timur Haber deliberately left in the human world. However, they were eventually destroyed. Not by other human forces, but by Haber Timur Haber himself. Jane Fankel's brows furrowed slightly, but she did not speak. She continued to maintain her silence. Zephyr continued. Haber Timur Haber knows how to take advantage of the weaknesses of humans. Wealth, honor, women, and extraordinary strength. Even if his descendants had great wealth and power, they could not escape the temptation of Haber Timur Haber. Haber Timur Haber also used his greedy descendants to achieve his evil goals. After he was done with them, they would be cleaned up like garbage. Zephyr glanced at Varian Marx and continued. Do you want to know how Haber Timur Haber got rid of his descendants? Jane Fankel raised her head. She could feel that Zephyr said all this on purpose. However, she could not help but be curious. She wanted to ask Zephyr for an answer. Devour, Zephyr said. Zephyr said, he gives his power to his children, and then this power is like a seed that takes root and germinates in his children's bodies. In a very short period of time, these children will become very powerful, even close to the level of an adult dragon. However, there is a price for their growth in such a short period of time, and that is their lives. They are so immersed in their own power that they are unable to extricate themselves and do not even realize it. Then, their final death will be personally bestowed by Hobbiton Moorhaber. Chapter 2632. Jane Fankel's face was extremely pale. Are you saying that my father and brother will be devoured by Hobbiton Moorhaber in the end? There is no doubt that all the past cases have proven this point. You are blood relatives, so your power is very compatible with his. However, at the same time, humans do not have the vitality and physique of dragons. At least, most humans do not. So, the power that you grew did not appear out of thin air. It was Hobbiton Moorhaber's seed that absorbed your vitality. Jane Fankel trembled in fear. She couldn't help but look at Varian Marks. Is that true? This kind of behavior is unique even among the dragons, Varian said calmly. Even the dragons would not harm their own blood relatives. Hobbiton Moorhaber is definitely an anomaly among the dragons. In the past hundreds of years, he has used his descendants to build a family to achieve his goals. At the same time, he has devoured his descendants one by one. Through this method, he has become unbelievably powerful. How powerful is he? Indescribable. Then, these people, under normal circumstances, they would suffer heavy losses and inflict serious damage to Hobbiton Moorhaber. But now, it is hard for us to have any hope. Why? Hobbiton Moorhaber has never fallen into a trap before. He would never fall into one unless he set it up himself. Haut-Viollet looked at Jane Fankel. Do you understand what I mean? You are saying that Hobbiton Moorhaber has deliberately lured them here? Although we still don't know what Hobbiton Moorhaber's goal is, I'm sure that he spread the news on purpose to lure these spiritualists here. Varian Marks said confidently. Maybe they're all Hobbiton Moorhaber's dinner. I know the correct way to this maze, Jane Fankel said. Everyone's gaze landed on Jane Fankel. However, I want you to rescue my father and brother. Hee. Those who are controlled by Hobbiton Moorhaber will never be able to escape his control. No, you must have a way. But Zephyr still shook her head firmly. There's no other way. Looks like you don't want to go through the maze. We don't have to go through this maze. I once snuck in here alone, and I reached the deepest part of the maze. I know what's inside. Jevra and Varian Max looked at each other. What's in the deepest part? A pearl, a white pearl, held in the palm of a stone statue. I was 14 years old at the time. I spent 6 hours trying to remember the route as I walked through the maze. I reached the deepest part of the maze and finally saw the white bead at the end. However, when I got close to the bead, I could barely stand. It was as if I was forced to kneel on the ground by an invisible force. Dragon Ball! Zephyra and Varian looked at each other again. What Jane Fankel described was very similar to what they knew about the Dragon Ball. But very few Dragon Balls have draconic aura, Zephyr said. It should be a high-level Dragon Ball. Hobbiton Moorhaber's goal is probably that Dragon Ball. That doesn't make sense. If he wanted the Dragon Ball, he could have gotten it himself. Maybe the Dragon Ball was already in his possession. Why did he have to play so many tricks? Or, the Dragon Ball isn't something he can take freely. Something is protecting him, and if he wants to get the Dragon Ball, he has to defeat the Guardian. If we follow this train of thought, his goal in attracting those spiritualists here is to let them replace him and defeat that Guardian. Then, he can reap the benefits without doing anything? That's possible. But why wasn't she attacked? Since she was already close to the Dragon Ball, she should have been attacked by the Guardian. With her ability, it's almost impossible for her to escape from the Guardian. There's no chance at all. Because she wasn't a threat, Zephyr said. She was probably intimidated by the draconic aura of the Dragon Ball, so she was not considered a threat. According to this logic, the Guardian of the Dragon Ball isn't a living creature. It's more like some kind of program, such as a gargoyle or a puppet. They will judge by themselves whether a creature close to the Dragon Ball is a threat. There's nothing in the deepest part of the labyrinth, Jane Fankel said. There was only a stone statue holding a Dragon Ball in the open field, and that stone statue was almost rotten, and it was only the size of an ordinary person. It was impossible for it to be a puppet or a gargoyle like you said Jen Fankel. As an ordinary person, you can't understand magic puppets or gargoyles. They might be around you, but you don't know about them. Or they need some kind of ritual or appear when necessary. Don't judge the world of magic with ordinary people's knowledge. Great Dragon Slayer, you can't even find the right way out of this labyrinth. What right do you have to be proud in front of me? At least you have something to ask of us now, Zephyr said disdainfully, glancing at Jane Fankel. She didn't want to bicker with Jane Fankel. It was meaningless. But what I want, you can't do it either, can you? You don't need to provoke us. Your father and brother are doomed to die. Only by stopping Hobart Moorhaber's plan can they live a little longer. Once Hobart Moorhaber achieves his goal, your father and brother will die even faster. For us, not stopping Hobart Moorhaber is already the norm. We don't lose anything, and we're already used to it. But for you, it's not the same. Jane Fankel's face stiffened. Finally, she sighed. I'll take you to the deepest part, Zephyr said. Actually, there's a way. What way? Since Hobart Moorhaber can devour them, of course they can also devour Hobart Moorhaber. Chapter 2633. Although it was only the 29th, Chin had already started greeting them one by one. Happy New Year, handsome. Happy New Year. I know it's your biggest holiday. I'll bring you a New Year's present next time I go to hell. Oh, do I need to prepare some red envelopes for you? That's for juniors. We're not juniors. Fine. What do I need to prepare for you? Treat me to a meal. However, the handsome guy had other ideas. After thinking for a long while, he said, I know what you need. What do I need? I don't even know myself. Do you? I remember you adopted a dragon, right? Yes. Is the person with the summoning magic array from last time there? Yes, I am. Tell him to summon it. I'll have a demon bring it over. Okay. After hanging up, Chin called Toddy Belster. Toddy, do you have time? Come out. I'll wait for you at the coast. Chin was curious what kind of gift the handsome guy would give him. Toddy Belster appeared on a two-headed dragon. The two-headed dragon, which was close to 10 meters long, looked very cool indeed. It also had some dragon blood, which made it look cool and have a hint of dragon might. Although the almost negligible dragon might had no effect on humans, it was very threatening to other creatures. Of course, Toddy Belster mainly wanted to avoid people. Of course, Toddy Belster mainly wanted to avoid being noticed, so she chose this mode of transportation. He didn't think he had the right to show off in front of Chin. President, Toddy Belster greeted respectfully. President, what kind of demon do you want me to summon? I don't know. Just summon one. Toddy was speechless. He didn't know what Chin wanted or what kind of demon he needed. So, after thinking for a while, Toddy summoned a big demon. He didn't know what Chin wanted or what kind of demon he needed. This demon was at the peak of intermediate demons. However, he still knelt on one knee before Chin. Greetings, sir. What did that person ask you to bring me? That lord asked me to bring you this. The demon took out an exquisite box and handed it to Jin. Okay, this is for you. Chin tossed a high-quality demonic crystal to the demon. The great demon's face lit up and he bowed again. Thank you for your kindness. This lowly one will take his leave. Jen opened the box. Inside was a flawless white pearl. Jen was a little surprised. The quality of this pearl seemed to be extraordinary. However, what was the use of this thing? He had heard from the handsome guy that this thing was used by abitos. However, the moment he opened the box, at the same time, it exuded a terrifying dragon's might. Great Demon and Toddy Belster both looked terrified. The oppressive feeling emitted by the dragon might made them almost unable to stand still. Jen glanced at Toddy Belster and the demon. He immediately closed the box, and the firebird suddenly disappeared. Toddy Belster, and the archdevil were relieved. The dragon might just now almost made him collapse. Toady, take him back. Toddy Belster let out a long sigh and recalled the great demon. President. That's, a friend sent it to me from hell. Toddy Belster gulped. A friend from hell? Jen had too many friends. Okay, that's all. Just as Toddy was about to leave, Jen suddenly stopped him. Oh. Happy New Year, Jen said. Toddy Belster was a pure American. He stared at Jen, dumbfounded. New Year? Both Christmas and New Year's had passed almost 2 months ago. Happy New Year at this time? Toddy Belster laughed with a face full of questions. Jen called the handsome guy again. Did you get it? Yes. It's a Dragon Ball, right? It should be of a high level. It's a Dragon King level Dragon Ball, the handsome guy said. But it's different from the ones in the human world. What's different? The dragon race also has a bottleneck. When the dragon race in hell faces the end of their lives, they will leave their strength and knowledge in the Dragon Ball for their descendants. When their descendants encounter a bottleneck, they will be able to quickly break through the bottleneck. This is the inheritance of the dragon. However, in the human world, the inheritance of the dragon race has long been severed. Therefore, when the dragon race encounters their own bottleneck, they will be forever locked in this realm. Most of the time, they can only rely on their race's innate talent to grow, and will not be able to break through. In other words, this Dragon Ball is for Abitos to use when he reaches his limit? Really? More accurately, it's for the little guy to be half a Dragon King before giving him the Legacy Dragon Ball. That's too far away, Jen said. Plus, his parents should be prepared. Abitos' adulthood would take at least a few hundred years. Jen might not even see Abitos become an adult. It would take thousands of years or even longer for him to reach the level of a Dragon King. His parents can't prepare for it, unless his mother mutilates herself and leaves him the Legacy Dragon Ball. Is Iris a Dragon King now? Isn't she a great lord? A great lord is a Dragon King. The handsome guy rolled his eyes. You don't think a Dragon King is the same as a secondary Demon King, do you? Isn't it? Dragons and demons have different levels. Fine, looks like I got it wrong. But if Iris can grow to the level of a Dragon King, Abitos can too. His bloodline isn't any weaker than his mother's. From the moment he was born, his appearance determined that he's a dragon. The dragon bloodline won. Even if he has the bloodline of a glutton, it'll only be useful in battle. He can only grow like a dragon. The bloodline of a glutton won't give him any advantage. How do I use this Dragon Ball? Hang a pendant on him. Put a layer of thorium on the surface of the Dragon Ball to block the dragon might. Then peel it off bit by bit so he can adapt to the dragon might. When the time is right, eat the Dragon Ball. Chapter 2634. Is it only effective for the first time? Yes, but if you can get more Legacy Dragon Balls for him, the effect will be better. More accurately, the upper limit will be higher. This is the only chance to increase the upper limit of the dragon race. In other words, there's no upper limit for the first use? No. The more, the better? The more, the better. There won't be any conflicts? Nope. Can you buy Legacy Dragon Balls with wealth in hell? As long as you're rich enough, there's nothing you can't buy in hell. Of course, you have enough wealth. That's expensive, right? It can create a great lord. Do you think it's expensive? Fine, pretend I didn't say anything. Chen thought about it and said, There should be in the human world too, right? I remember there's a Dragon King in the human world. Even if there's a Dragon King, it doesn't mean there's an inheritance. As far as I know, the dragon inheritance in the human world has been cut off long ago. When the ancestral dragon exiled the hybrid dragons, he cut off their inheritance from the root. He must have exiled many hybrid dragons back then, right? Can he check them one by one? He directly cut off the roots. All the members of the hybrid dragon tribe who were qualified to inherit the inheritance were all killed by him. Those who were exiled were almost all young dragons, and a curse was placed in their bloodlines. no member of the Haiba dragon tribe was allowed to inherit the inheritance. Unless a more powerful being than the ancestral dragon appeared in the Haiba dragon tribe one day, the curse would follow the descendants of the Haiba dragon tribe forever. Chen had some hope at first. Perhaps he could find it in the human world and gain something. But the handsome guy's words made Chen completely give up. There were legacy dragon balls in hell. However, the value of each inheritance dragon ball was 10 times greater than the wealth of a greater demon overlord. Imagine a demon lord at the level of Beelzebub Sophie. The wealth accumulated over thousands of years was only enough to buy 1/10 of one legacy dragon ball. After hanging up, Chin went straight to Ruan Fazaban's house. Ruan Faxben had recently bought a house outside. He didn't have to report to the supernatural organization every day, so most of the time, he didn't go out at all. However, his house was also very remote, mainly because he usually had to do some experiments. If he chose to do it in the downtown area, it would be more inconvenient. In fact, many members of the supernatural organization chose to buy houses outside. Ruan Faxi was not the first. This was Chen's first visit to Ruan Faisai's main family. His family wasn't small. Chen walked to the door and pressed the doorbell. Although he could go in directly, Chen didn't want to be rude. Who? Ruan Faxben's tone was rather impolite. Me. Kachai 1/10 of a second later, the door opened. Although Ruan Faxi's house wasn't small, it was rather messy. Many things were thrown all over the place, and no one had tidied them up. Guild leader, why are you here? Ruan Faxi thought it was because of what Chen had said during the day. Do you have thorium here? Thorium? I don't have any. President, what do you need thorium for? I need to wrap something in thorium. President, thorium is a very rare magical metal. It's almost as valuable as gold, but there aren't many uses for it, so I don't have any reserves. Do you know where I can find it? President, if you're not in a hurry, I can mine and smelt some, but it'll take a few months. Mine and smelt? You changed your profession? It's hard to buy thorium on the market, so alchemists like us usually choose to mine it ourselves if we need it. Do you know where there's a thorium mine? No. Then how are you going to find it? President, I've raised gold-eating hyenas for a few days. They like to eat magical metals and can find ores dozens of kilometers away. Alchemists basically have a few. Gold-eating hyenas? What kind? Bring me there. When Qin Yuanben heard the name, he thought it would be some ferocious magical beast. In the end, Ruan Faxi brought Chen to a fence that was more than 10 square meters wide. Chen looked at the dozen square meters of enclosure and saw a few round meatballs. His face was full of shock. Are those the metal-eating boars? Yes, President. Is there a problem? Chen looked at the meatballs. They weren't big or ferocious. They were about the size of a Pekingese and no more than 30 centimeters tall. Their bodies were oval and they had 4 short legs. They could barely stand on the ground. If the ground was slightly uneven, they would probably roll on their bellies. Looking at the gold-eating hyenas, they seemed to have 4 legs on their heads and 2 small tails hanging from their butts. How do I order these gold-eating hyenas? Hold them in your arms. Basically, wherever they go, there'll be magical metal ores. In other words, they might not find thorium ores. Gold-eating hyenas are usually fed regular metals. If you need them to find magical metal ores, just feed them that. They'll remember the taste of the magical metal and only look for it. However, they'll only look for the tastiest magical metal in their memory. For example, if they think that mithril tastes better than thorium, they'll only look for mithril and not thorium. Thus, you can only feed them regular metals and only feed them magical metals when they're needed. After a few times, they basically lose their appetite and become useless. They can only be used for breeding and can no longer search for magical metals. So, if I want them to find thorium, I have to feed them thorium first? Yes. But I don't have it. You don't either. Ruan Faxben grinned. There are a few magic items in my collection that contain thorium. I'll dismantle them. Chen snickered. He wasn't mocking him. Judging from Ruan Faxi's pained expression, he must have suffered a great loss. Don't be so pained. I'll get you some good stuff later as compensation. Ruan Faxi instantly beamed. Chin even suspected that he was trying to trick him with that expression. Chin picked up a gold-eating hyena. It didn't struggle at all. Instead, it gurgled and burrowed into Chen's arms. There was some dust on the gold-eating hyena, but it wasn't dirty. It was also very fleshy. It had the potential to be a cute pet. Chin wondered if she should get some for the kids to play with at home. Do these little pigs poop everywhere? Chapter 2635. President, metal-eating hyenas love cleanliness. They're also smart. As long as you give them a spot, they'll go there and won't excrete randomly. Can they be pets? Yes, but no one will keep them as pets. Why? They like magical metals the most, but they also eat regular metals. If they're not full of magical metals, they'll eat regular metals. Think about who doesn't have a lot of metal in their house. Air. Chen Zhao thought about it. This was a problem. Forget it. I'll think about it later. Chen Zhao decided to settle this before tomorrow. He would give it to Abitos during the new year. President, you can carry it and find a random place. Then, after a certain distance, if it doesn't respond, you can change direction. But it's best if it's further away. California was once mined by the spiritual world, so it's almost impossible to find any rare magical metal mines in California. Okay, got it. Soon, Ruan Faxi returned with the thorium he'd removed from the magic tool. It was only the size of a fingernail. When the fat boy in Chen Zhao's arms saw the small piece of thorium, he immediately struggled to rush to it. Chen Zhao took the thorium. The boy gurgled, as if he couldn't wait anymore. Chen Zhao didn't tease him. He put the thorium into the boy's mouth. The little fat boy ate happily. Unfortunately, there was too little thorium. It wasn't even enough for a few mouthfuls. Is this okay? Yes. That small piece of thorium isn't enough for him. He'll want more thorium now. Okay, I'm leaving. With that, Chen Zhao carried the boy and flew into the air. Mac's family's underground maze. Under Jen Fankel's lead, the group had reached the third level of the maze. However, their journey here wasn't smooth. They weren't the only team here. Some teams even launched attacks on them. Fortunately, everyone here was feeling the way blindly, so most of the teams were separated. Therefore, there weren't many people who attacked them. However, the maze was large and complicated. They couldn't stop so many people. Moreover, there were spiritualists among them who could guide them. Therefore, their speed of advancement might not necessarily be slower than theirs. There were still many corpses along the way. It didn't seem like they had killed each other. It looked more like a corpse that had been eaten by some wild beast. However, with so many spiritualists, it wasn't strange for a few of them to raise exotic beasts or summon demonic creatures. At this moment, a team of about 8 or 9 people appeared in front of them. They had about the same number of people on their side. The leader was a bespectacled man with long hair. The man was followed by 2 ferocious dogs. The long-haired man had a faint smile on his face as he looked at the Dragon Slayer team opposite him. Varian furrowed her brows. She did not like the long-haired man in front of her. He didn't know why, but he felt a sense of disgust. Suddenly, Varian's pupils constricted. He glared at the long-haired man. The dragon race. That man was also a dragon. Varian Marks immediately drew her weapon. Her weapons were a pair of silver spears, engraved with many cryptic runes. Although Zevra and Varian Max didn't get along. But at this moment, her choice was the same. Varian's enemy was her enemy. Don't be impulsive. A conflict here won't do you any good, the long-haired man said with a smile. However, his words didn't make the Dragon Slayer team lower their guard and weapons. At this moment, a tall man beside the long-haired man said, "Master, let me teach these little guys a lesson." The man was dressed like an ancient gladiator. He wore chainmail, but his arms were bare. He carried a large sword on his back. Varian's pupils contracted when she saw the dragon tattoo on the man's arm. "Traitor!" Varian snorted in a low voice. The tall man grinned. Little guy, if you want to get to the root of the matter, you're the traitors. Randolph stepped down. The long-haired man waved his hand. The tall man called Randolph retreated respectfully. Dragon Slayer, I'm not your target. I'm not an evil dragon either. Our goals should be the same. Every dragon is a good thing, Varian said coldly. All right, every dragon slayer is indeed an extreme lunatic. The long-haired man sighed. Even if I'm an evil dragon, you shouldn't have a conflict with me here. You have no chance of winning. Dragon slayers didn't rely on their bravery to slay dragons. In a direct battle, no dragon slayer could defeat a dragon. Dragons were dragons because they were so powerful that no one could defeat them. Even though it was a dragon in human form, most spiritualists still stopped in their tracks. No, this underground labyrinth uses a large amount of thorium. Thorium can greatly suppress dragons. You might not even be able to use half of your strength here, and you can't even revert to your dragon form here. So, we have a chance of winning, Varian Max said coldly. The long-haired man laughed. Yes, indeed. I can't even use half of my strength here. But if you want to defeat me, you must first understand my upper limit. Even if I can only use 1/10 of my strength, I'm still. Whoosh! Instantly, the long-haired man's eyes lit up. Along with his sharp gaze was a terrifying dragon aura. The Dragon Slayer team instantly felt a terrifying pressure. Varian clenched her teeth, but her legs couldn't help but tremble. Some of the weak-willed members of the Dragon Slayer team behind her had even collapsed to the ground. For example, Jane Fankel. She didn't have any experience fighting against Dragon Aura. She was already curled up on the ground, shivering. You can't even defeat my 2 dogs now, the long-haired man said with a smile. You should be glad that I didn't plan to kill you. The long-haired man retracted his Dragon Aura. But at that moment, Varian fired. A magic bullet was shot at the long-haired man. Whoosh! The long-haired man caught the bullet with 2 fingers. Hee. The long-haired man was still smiling. I can forgive you the first time. Chapter 2636. You're not weakened by thorium? Valerie looked at the long-haired man in disbelief. It wasn't hard to catch bullets with bare hands. The hard part was catching her magic bullets. They were magic bullets specially designed to deal with dragons. It was a magic bullet that could pierce through the scales of an adult dragon and cause great damage to them. But now, the guy in front of her caught them with 2 fingers. Hee, weakened? I never said I was weakened, the long-haired man said with a smile. Thorium does have a certain weakening effect on ordinary dragons, but for a dragon at the level of Dragon Father, it's just a little uncomfortable. That's all. Dragon Father? Everyone in the Dragon Slayer team's expression changed. Even Jane Fankel had been in contact with Valerie for the past few days. She more or less knew what Dragon Father represented. It was the top existence among the dragons. All right, if I wanted to kill you, you would be dead already, the long-haired man said indifferently. The Dragon Slayers were quite unhappy with this statement, but they couldn't refute it. The long-haired man was too powerful. So powerful that it made them feel hopeless. Let's go, Valerie snorted in a low voice. She was unhappy with the long-haired man in front of her. But she also knew that continuing to fight wouldn't help. She couldn't kill the long-haired man. Instead, she would anger him. The Dragon Slayers walked in front of the team. Suddenly, she realized that the long-haired man and his men were following them. Valerie had been restraining herself at first. But when she realized that there was a team following them, she couldn't hold it in anymore. She stopped with a dark expression and turned to look at the long-haired man. What do you want? The long-haired man walked up with a smile. It's on the way. Do you mind going together? Yes. I don't mind. Humph! Valerie turned and walked away. However, she and her team couldn't shake off the long-haired man behind them. This made her more and more irritable, almost to the point of going berserk. She turned back again and looked at the man following her. She walked in front of the long-haired man. The long-haired man smiled and waved his hand. Valerie, don't be so irritable. I didn't do anything. You just haven't done anything yet. I didn't do anything before, did I? You knew me before? Varian Marks frowned at the man in front of her. She tried to remember where she had seen this man before. However, other than disgust, she couldn't find any memory of this man. The famous crocodile. How could I not know? The long-haired man said with a smile. Crocodile, Varian's nickname. For a woman to receive such a nickname, it was definitely not a good name. She had killed a few dragons in the past. She was like a crocodile, patiently waiting for the arrival of her prey, patiently waiting for the prey to step into her carefully prepared trap. Once her prey took the bait, she would kill it in the most vicious way possible, just like a crocodile. Varian stared at the man in front of her. Could it be that he was one of her targets in the past? However, if he was her target in the past, there was no reason for him not to remember. However, this smile was hard to ignore. He must have seen him somewhere before. That smile was driving her crazy. Varian's thoughts kept moving backward. Vaguely, Varian Marks seemed to have found that damned smile. In the Marks family, right here. Decades ago, when she was still a few years old, she had already forgotten her exact age. This man had appeared here before. He had been a visitor here. Everything came back to him. It's you! Looks like you remember, hee. Do you still remember my name? Once again, Varian's thoughts wandered back to decades ago. She tried to recall what this man had done. Arthur Alberta Haber! Ha! Arthur Alberta Haber laughed. You still remember me. What do you want to do? Do what? Arthur Alberta Haber rubbed his chin and thought for a long time. Stop Hobart Moore Haber, my brother. You and Hobart Moore Haber are brothers? Is it strange? The corners of Arthur Alberta Haber's mouth curved. Since you are brothers with him, why do you want to stop him? You shouldn't. Shouldn't we be in cahoots? Really? Varian Marks didn't reply, but that was what her eyes meant. You are not the kind of person who upholds justice. Dragon? Varian said. Indeed I am not, but I care about my status, Arthur Alberta Haber said. Arthur Alberta Haber said. His current behavior has threatened my position. So it's dog biting dog. Varian's voice seemed to be very soft, but in fact, she deliberately said it for Arthur Alberta Haber to hear. You're right, it's dog biting dog. But in this way, you should also believe in my position, my lovely little niece. Dragons can never be trusted, Varian said coldly. Don't forget that half of the blood that flows in your body is also the blood of the giant dragon. So what? I never thought I was a descendant of dragons. Your bloodline will not disappear because you deny it, and you are still using the bloodline of dragons that you hate the most to achieve your own goals. Is there a problem with using the power of dragons to kill dragons? This is what I like to do the most. Then do you desire more power? I do. Then admit your dragon bloodline. No need. Then you will never be able to defeat him. He is more powerful than you think. There will always be someone in this world who can kill him. Zephyra suddenly interjected. Arthur Alberta Haber shook his head. There are very few dragons who can defeat him, let alone humans. What about you? Aren't you here to stop him? If possible, I really don't want to have anything to do with this lunatic. Arthur Alberta Haber sighed. Are you afraid of him too? It's not that I'm afraid of him, but some of his methods give even me a headache. I've fought with dragons. Even dragons have weaknesses. He can think of the weaknesses that you can think of. He can be called the dragon of deceit, but it's not just for show. Chapter 2637. What does he want to do? Variantha Marks stared at Arthur Alberta Haber and asked. Arthur Alberta Haber was silent for a while, then said, There is a dragon ball below. His goal is that dragon ball. No! Zephyr frowned and said, For the dragon race, one dragon ball is enough. Even if they eat the dragon ball of other dragons, There will not be any improvement. This doesn't make sense. Of course it's not an ordinary Dragon Ball, Arthur Alberta Haber said calmly. That thing shouldn't exist in this world. What do you mean? It's not an ordinary Dragon Ball? What kind of Dragon Ball is that? That's the Dragon Ball of the ancient dragon race. It is said that as long as you can get the recognition of the Dragon Ball, you will have the same power as the ancient dragon race. Is there any difference between the ancient dragon race and the current dragon race? I don't know. Arthur Alberta Haber shrugged. Logically speaking, there should be no gap between the two. Just like you humans call the people hundreds of years ago ancient, the same is true for us dragons. It's just that our time span is longer and longer. There is no difference in essence. Is there no difference between the ancient dragon race and the current dragon race? No, we dragons have enough time to learn the magic knowledge of our elders, so there is no gap in inheritance. What the ancient dragon race knows, our current generation of dragons also knows. Even with the development of the times, I believe that the ancient dragon race may not know more than us. But you also said that the Dragon Ball is the Dragon Ball of the ancient dragon race. Your words have already explained that the Dragon Ball is different. What I know comes from my father's generation. Of course I know what my father told me. How would I know what my father didn't tell me? I wasn't born knowing. Then why did the Dragon Ball appear here? Zephyr asked. My grandfather's grandfather was placed here. Your grandfather's grandfather? Arthur Alberta Haber shrugged. Speaking of which, I don't know if the Dragon Ball can really allow the recognized dragon to obtain the power of the ancient dragon race. But I can be sure that if Haber Timur Haber obtains the ancient Dragon Ball, then there will definitely be big trouble. The spiritualist here should have been deliberately leaked by Haber Timur Haber, right? That's right. What is his purpose in doing this? Isn't it better to secretly get the ancient Dragon Ball? If he can get it, then it won't be so troublesome. If he could get it, he wouldn't have to go through so much trouble. That ancient Dragon Ball's draconic might far exceeds that of an ordinary dragon. Even a dragon like him would find it difficult to resist this draconic might, so he needs a human to bear the pressure brought by the draconic might. There is a limit to how much draconic might one can endure. If the draconic might's pressure is 100, then a person approaching the range of the draconic might will completely bear the pressure of 100. But if it's 100 people, then these 100 people can share the pressure of 100. Although I don't know what the limit of the draconic might of the ancient Dragon Ball is, if it's divided into 1,000th, then even Haber Timur Haber can easily bear it. So what news did Haber Timur Haber spread to attract so many spiritualists? It's a very stupid lie, but it's very effective. He said that the ancient dragon clan's treasures are hidden here, and he even gave out many self-made treasure maps. Those stupid humans actually believed it to be true, and even treated it as a secret, keeping it a secret. Arthur Alberta Haber snorted and shook his head. If it were me, I would make this lie more perfect, instead of only deceiving idiots. However, at this moment, no one was in the mood to argue with Arthur Alberta Haber. Even Varian Marx only wanted to get to the lowest floor as soon as possible at this moment, to prevent Haber Timur Haber from obtaining the ancient Dragon Ball. So even if Arthur Alberta Haber and his men were by his side, he would not be able to do anything. Varian Marx didn't have any more objections, although she didn't have a good impression of Arthur Alberta Haber. But the threat of Haber Timur Haber was obviously greater. Moreover, in order to stop Haber Timur Haber, he had to use Arthur Alberta Haber's power at this moment. So this time, she didn't refuse Arthur Alberta Haber's company along the way. But along the way, she was still cold to Arthur Alberta Haber. It was not a peaceful journey either. From time to time, a team would pop up and cause trouble for them. Arthur Alberta Haber basically only needed to send 2 vicious dogs to kill those people until they pissed their pants. If they encountered a slightly stronger spiritualist team, they would exclude their subordinates. Like the Dragon Slayer squad, they were all mixed-blood dragons. But they called themselves half-dragons. Although they had the same bloodline, their fighting style was completely different from the Dragon Slayer squad. Most of the dragon slayers were used to relying on equipment. On the other hand, half-dragons were used to using their own bloodline. They transformed into half-dragons without any scruples, and even directly transformed into small dragons. Coupled with their large weapons, the combat power they displayed was quite amazing. Although the Dragon Slayer squad kept saying that they disdained these half-dragons. But when they saw their combat power, their eyes still showed splendor. Dragon Slayers could also transform into half-dragons, but most of the characteristics of dragon transformation were very few. The more dragon characteristics, the stronger their combat power was, and vice versa, the weaker they were. On the one hand, their dragon transformation needed to be bathed in dragon blood. As Arthur Alberta Haber's subordinates, they definitely did not lack dragon blood. And the dragon blood that the dragon slayers needed to be done by themselves, which was definitely not as abundant as half-dragons. Moreover, half-dragons accepted their own bloodline, and they recognized their identity as dragon descendants. And the dragon slayers rejected and resisted their own bloodline. So the difference in their strength was obvious. Half-dragons and dragon slayers were like old enemies. Both sides provoked each other with their eyes after the battle. Fortunately, under Arthur Alberta Haber's suppression, the two sides did not directly clash. This maze was really big, and even with Jane Fankel leading the way, they would still go wrong. Although Jane Fankel's memory was amazing, it was a long time ago. Even she remembered a few things incorrectly. So everyone walked for nearly 5 hours. After going around a long flight of stairs, everyone's eyes suddenly opened up. A huge underground space appeared in front of everyone. The ground, walls, and ceiling of this space were all made of square stones. The whole space was also square, with the same length, width, and height. It was estimated that each right angle was 10,000 meters. This was definitely not a project that could be completed by humans. As Arthur Alberta Haber said, this place was built by his grandfather's grandfather. Chapter 2638. In the underground space that was like the sky. Every piece of stone inlaid in the ground was flat, not like ancient craftsmanship. At this moment, there were already hundreds of spiritualists in this cube space. But at this moment, they were fighting fiercely with the magic puppets. These magic puppets all drilled out of the magic formation, and their numbers were endless. Moreover, their numbers were endless. There were probably close to 10,000 magic puppets at the scene alone. These magic puppets were of different shapes and sizes. Some were like giant spiders, and some looked like ordinary people. However, their individual strength was relatively not strong, and they won in quantity. The difference in their strength could be seen from the size of their heads. The more they were, the stronger they were. There were very few big ones, and most of them were ordinary soldiers. At this moment, these magic puppets were fighting with the spiritualists. It was the first time Al and Jane Fankel had seen such a big scene. There! Jane Fankel saw the stone statue in the middle of the field. The stone statue was very conspicuous, because there was no one around it with a diameter of about 500 meters. The stone statue held a white pearl in its palm. That was obviously the ancient dragon pearl. Everyone immediately headed in the direction of the ancient dragon pearl. Stop right there! Arthur Alberta Haber called out to everyone. The Dragon Slayer team immediately revealed vigilant and hostile eyes, staring at Arthur Alberta Haber. What are you doing? Varian Marks questioned. Didn't you notice? There's no one around there. Only a few people lying on the ground at the edge, Arthur Alberta Haber said calmly. Varian furrowed her brows. At this moment, a few figures appeared in the other direction of the cube. Although it was far away, Arthur Alberta Haber could still see clearly that the leader of the few figures was Halbert Timor Haber. Halbert Timor Haber met Arthur Alberta Haber's gaze. Arthur Alberta Haber narrowed his eyes and looked at Halbert Timor Haber. Halbert Timor Haber waved his hand, and his men immediately dispersed. What are they fighting for? Varian said. That's... Jane Fankel saw her father and brother. They were picking up a silver awl from the corpse of a spiritualist. His elder brother had just killed a spiritualist, and snatched a green bracelet from his hand. Arthur Alberta Haber's eyes narrowed slightly. Ascending Dragon Devil Immortal Treasure! What is it? It was created by the ancient humans to fight against the Dragon Clan, Arthur Alberta Haber said. Many of these people carry these things, or Haber summoned them for these things. Stop him! Once he obtains enough Ascending Dragon magic tools, it is very likely that he will be able to enter the ancient Dragon Ball's draconic might unimpeded. Varian thought for a moment, and exchanged glances with Zephyra. They also knew that Haber Timur Haber was their main target. Anything that could stop Haber Timur Haber's goal was acceptable. The two Dragon Slayer teams had never worked together before. But their actions were like close comrades in arms. A Dragon Slayer held a cannon and fired a shot at a demi-dragon under Haber Timur Haber's command. But what came out of the cannon was not a cannonball, but a net. The tall demi-dragon immediately wanted to tear off the net on his body. But this net was tougher than he had imagined. It couldn't be torn for a while. Immediately afterward, a few other Dragon Slayers held automatic rifles in their hands and fired at the Draconians. But at this moment, another demi-dragon rushed toward the Dragon Slayer. Suddenly, a tall figure blocked in front of the Dragon Slayer team. The one who attacked was a demi-dragon under Arthur Alberta Haber's command. Varian remembered that this demi-dragon was called Randolph. It was a demi-dragon against a demi-dragon, but Randolph's strength was obviously stronger than his opponent by more than one level. With a move, the big sword swept again, and the demi-dragon was directly swept away. But Randolph didn't notice that a figure quietly approached him from the chaotic battlefield. Taking advantage of Randolph's fight with the enemy, the figure suddenly flew directly to Randolph's back at an extremely fast speed. Although it was not big, it was extremely fierce. Its claws firmly grasped Randolph's back. At the same time, black flames ignited on its palms. The black flames followed the figure's claws and penetrated into the skin on Randolph's back that was scratched. Ouch! Randolph screamed in pain. Bang bang, Zevra was quick to react. She fired a few shots at the figure behind Randolph. The figure was shot down. Big brother! Jane Fankel was shocked. She had already recognized that the figure who attacked Randolph was her big brother. Caesar Marx was 80% dragonized at the moment. Although he was not much bigger, he already had dragon horns, tail, and wings. Zevra still wanted to pursue, but Jane Fankel opened her arms in front of Zevra. Zevra didn't care about Jane Fankel at all. She directly reached out and swept Jane Fankel's face away. She fired several shots at Caesar Marx on the ground. However, Caesar Marx went to the ground and dodged a few times. He easily avoided Zevra's attack and disappeared into the chaotic crowd in the blink of an eye. Zevra looked at Jane Fankel angrily and pointed the muzzle directly at her head. If there's a next time, I will kill you first, then your deformed father and brother. Jane Fankel's face turned pale. She looked at Varian Marx for help. However, Varian's expression became even colder. If there's a next time, I will kill you first without Zevra doing anything. Hee, don't be so serious. Arthur Alberta Haber smiled and smoothed things over. She's just an ordinary person to us, so it's understandable. The enemy doesn't care whether she's an ordinary person or not. On the battlefield, anyone who gets in the way will be classified as an enemy. Zevra's cold gaze made Jane Fankel shudder. I think she's learned to be obedient after this. Humph, it's your men who are injured. You're generous and not angry at all. Zevra glanced at Randolph. Randolph was barely standing. However, his back was already a mess of flesh and blood, and the black scorch marks burned his back beyond recognition. Chapter 2639. Arthur Alberta Haber glanced at Randolph. Then he pricked his finger, and a drop of dragon blood seeped out of the wound. Arthur Alberta Haber flicked his finger lightly, and the dragon blood landed on Randolph's body. The terrible burn on Randolph's back gradually recovered. Randolph's pained expression also gradually eased. My lord, I want to kill that guy. Randolph was straightforward. How could he stand such an insult? He was ambushed by the opponent, and then he escaped. For him, it was a great humiliation. In the chaotic battlefield between the spiritualists and the magic puppets, he could vaguely see Caesar Marks wandering around in it. He had been lying on the ground, crawling like a lizard. He was fast and agile, and he was low. It was difficult for the spiritualists in the battle to notice his existence. He would ambush one or two people from time to time, and every time he succeeded. The more Randolph watched, the angrier he got. 1/3 of the thousands of spiritualists on the battlefield had died. The scene was a little out of control. First, it was the endless magic puppets. Second, it was the trouble caused by Hobart Moorhaber's men. Originally, the situation was a little difficult, but because of their disturbance, it had completely developed in the direction of defeat. Every ascending dragon magic implement that was snatched would be sent to Hobart Moorhaber. And those ascending dragon magic implements were in front of Hobart Moorhaber. Hobart Moorhaber didn't touch them. They were floating around an irregularly shaped thing in Hobart Moorhaber's hands. That irregularly shaped thing should also be a magic implement, but it didn't have any beauty. Heart of Sodium, Arthur Alberta Haber said with a frown. What is it? Varian asked in confusion. Artifact. It can be used as the core of all magic tools, and then combine several or dozens of completely unrelated magic tools together to form a brand new magic tool and improve it to a brand new quality. But Ascending Dragon Magic Implement isn't a magic tool, right? Ascending Dragon Magic Implement is a magic tool, but it's aimed at dragons. It's still lethal to others, but it can restrain dragons. At this time, even Arthur Alberta Haber could not sit still. He didn't care about the scattered Ascending Dragon magic tools. They were like a group of ants that posed almost zero threat to him. But if this group of ants were divided into a whole group, then he could no longer sit back and do nothing. Not long after, the Draconic Ascending Magic Tool was assembled. The Draconic Ritual Implement was like Hobart Moorhaber's extra prosthetic limb. It was attached to his back, but the limb was much larger than his body. It was like an ordinary human being had a giant's arm transplanted onto his body. These people are probably the descendants of the ancient Tyrok, Zephyr said. What's ancient Tillok? Arthur Alberta Haber asked, puzzled. He realized that there were still things in this world that he didn't know. Varian Marks glanced at Arthur Alberta Haber and said, The embryonic form of the Dragon Slayer was originally a coalition of human spiritualists, but it later fell apart because of interests. In other words, the Ascending Dragon Magic Tool was developed by them? It should be, but this technology should have been lost. Of course it's lost, because the main material of the Ascending Dragon Magic Tool is the dragon race. Hobart Moorhaber's subordinates were using the bodies of the spiritualists to throw them into the domain of the ancient dragon balls. Then, the corpses of the spiritualists began to stand up one after another. However, their eyes had already lost their luster. But as soon as they stood up, their faces showed pain, and they fell down one after another. It was as if they were pressed to the ground by an invisible force. Human faces kept popping out from under their skin, but they quickly shrunk back into their bodies. What's going on? Hobart Moorhaber injected a large number of foreign souls into each corpse. Didn't he slaughter thousands of people before in order to collect the souls of these people? Each spiritualist's body can be injected with at least a few to dozens of souls, which can share the draconic might of the ancient dragon balls to a greater extent. When the remaining spiritualists on the scene saw this scene, they all felt their scalps go numb. But at this time, even if they wanted to retreat, there was no way. Hobart Moorhaber was implementing his plan step by step, and it was successful. Hobart Moorhaber looked provocatively at Arthur Alberta Haber, and then walked into the range of the draconic might of the ancient dragon balls. However, his footsteps suddenly slowed down. The arm formed by the Ascending Dragon Magic Tool on his back suddenly burst out with a ripple, weakening the pressure of the draconic might a lot. Although Hobart Moorhaber still felt very uncomfortable, at least it was not as difficult to move as before. Arthur Alberta Haber could no longer calm down at this moment, and immediately rushed into the range of the draconic might. However, as soon as he entered the draconic might, he regretted it. because the draconic might emitted by this ancient dragon ball was far more terrifying than he had imagined. All the power was completely suppressed. In this range, even a magic ball couldn't be thrown out. And his body felt like it was injected with thousands of tons of lead water. This made him have no choice but to directly transform into his real body, a 300-meter-long giant silver dragon. When Varian Marks and others saw the silver dragon that Arthur Alberta Haber had transformed into, their faces showed a trace of shock. The expressions of Al and Jane Fankel were completely lifeless. Dragon? A real dragon. That was the legendary dragon. Although they had been influenced by what they had seen and heard in the past few days, they also knew that they had dragon blood in them. But in the end, they had never seen a real dragon. At most, they could only look at the dragon form of a demi-dragon. However, the dragon form of a demi-dragon was simply two different concepts compared to the real dragon that Arthur Alberta Haber had transformed into. Arthur Alberta Haber had to use his draconic might to contend with the draconic might of the ancient dragon ball. However, his draconic might was still so insignificant in front of the draconic might emitted by the ancient dragon ball. Every step he took was full of difficulty, like a person trapped in a swamp. That kind of pain and helplessness made him unable to continue. And this was still under the condition that the draconic might of the ancient dragon ball had been shared. Chapter 2640. Arthur Alberta Haber had long expected that the dragon might of the ancient dragon ball would be very powerful. But he didn't expect it to be this powerful. It was exactly the same as his father's dragon might. It was suffocating and oppressive. It was hard to imagine how powerful the owner of this ancient dragon ball was when he was alive. Even if he transformed into a dragon form, he could only barely resist the dragon might. Taking a step forward was so difficult. But Hobart Timor Haber was more relaxed than him. At least relatively speaking, Hobart Timor Haber's speed was much faster than Arthur Alberta Haber's. However, the closer he got, the stronger the oppressive feeling brought by the dragon might. Even Hobart Timor Haber found it difficult to walk too fast. Although the prosthetic arm formed by the ascending dragon magic tool behind him shared most of the dragon might, the ascending dragon magic tool was not immune. However, the ascending dragon magic instrument was not immune. It could only weaken a portion of the dragon's might. Time passed minute by minute. Arthur Alberta Haber was also doing his best to get close to the ancient dragon ball. But he still couldn't keep up with Hobart Timor Haber's progress. Hobart Timor Haber approached from another direction. He was more than twice as fast as Arthur Alberta Haber. About 30 minutes later, both Arthur Alberta Haber and Hobart Timor Haber felt that they could no longer move forward. However, at this time, Hobart Timor Haber was less than 100 meters away from the ancient dragon ball. At this time, Hobart Timor Haber finally revealed his true body. He turned into a gray dragon, and the ascending dragon magic tool on his body turned into a metal dragon head, side by side with his original head. In an instant, he was only 30 meters away from the ancient dragon ball. Arthur Alberta Haber's expression changed dramatically, and he immediately moved forward with all his strength. However, he had only advanced a few meters. The distance to the ancient dragon ball was still far away. Hobart Timor Haber's metal dragon head stretched out its neck. The metal dragon head was originally transformed from the ascending dragon magic tool, and it had an extremely strong resistance to the dragon might. So at this moment, it was extending towards the ancient dragon ball unimpeded. Finally, the metal dragon head bit the ancient dragon ball and retracted. Hobart Timor Haber's head had received the ancient dragon ball. At the moment of contact, countless knowledge, memories, and terrifying power poured into Hobart Timor Haber's body. Hobart Timor Haber understood a lot of things and understood a lot of things. He now knew why dragons appeared in this world. He also knew many secrets that even the Dragon King did not know. He also learned about the dragon language magic that the dragon clan did not inherit. The former owner of this ancient dragon ball was called Arilak Haber, a dragon that was even more powerful than the current Dragon King. He was once a great lord who dominated a region. Later on, He also became a member of the resistance against the progenitor dragon army. However, the resistance failed. Many of his clansmen were slaughtered. He was also one of them. However, he was luckier than his companions. He had his own children and his own inheritance. He didn't come to the human world, but his children brought his inheritance dragon pearl to this world. This was the only inheritance dragon pearl of the Haber dragon clan that was left before the progenitor dragon launched the bloodline prohibition. But unfortunately, his descendants did not become the leaders of the dragon clan after coming to the human world. At that time, the dragon clan that was exiled to the human world also had their own factions. One of the branches became the leader of the exiled. Furthermore, he became the Dragon King without borrowing the ancient Dragon Ball. The Dragon King, the common ancestor of Haber Timur Haber and Arthur Alberta Haber, directly hid this ancient Dragon Ball. On the one hand, he didn't want a second Dragon King to appear, causing internal strife in the Dragon clan, and also to avoid other Dragon clans fighting for power with him. But he didn't want to completely destroy this ancient Dragon Ball. When his descendants couldn't become the Dragon King, or when there was a great crisis in the Dragon clan. In that case, this ancient Dragon Pearl would play a crucial role. And this secret was only known by the Dragon Kings of the past. But now, this ancient Dragon Ball didn't play a key role. Haber Timur Haber became the beneficiary of the ancient Dragon Ball. The oppressive feeling on Arthur Alberta Haber's body suddenly disappeared. He didn't have any joy, but his face changed dramatically. Arthur Alberta Haber immediately turned around. Go! Leave here! Haber Timur Haber felt that the ancient Dragon Ball was constantly releasing a terrifying power. And this power was becoming a part of him. It was merging into his Dragon Ball. Haber Timur Haber's originally gray dragon scales were now gradually covered with red lines. His body grew larger, and his aura became even more terrifying. Haber Timur Haber glanced at Arthur Alberta Haber, and a sneer appeared on his face. My dear brother, do you want to escape? Arthur Alberta Haber was terrified. From Haber Timur Haber's body, a brand new dragon aura had begun to spread. It was exactly the same dragon aura as the ancient Dragon Ball, but it was more autonomous than the ancient Dragon Ball. Father has always regarded you as the heir, and now it has been proven that I am the most suitable heir. Haber Timur Haber said proudly. But now, I don't need to prove anything to him. The next time I return to Dragon Island, I will seize his royal power with my own hands. What Haber Timur Haber obtained was not only power, but also the dragon language magic that his father had never mastered. Dragon language magic did not completely disappear, but the dragon language magic that the current dragons mastered was far less powerful than the ancient Dragon Ball. It was because the exiled dragons had lost a large part of it. Haber Timur Haber was confident that he could defeat his father, the Dragon King, whom he once had to look up to. Everyone here must die! Haber Timur Haber shouted. In an instant, a terrifying dragon aura burst out. This dragon aura was like a substance, and everyone present vomited blood in an instant. The ground was directly trampled by the dragon aura. This was the Dragon King's dragon aura, which was completely different from ordinary dragons. He only needed to rely on the dragon aura to directly cause damage. Arthur Alberta Haber turned pale with fright, and his wings quickly caught Varian marks and the others. However, there were still a few people who were not protected by him and fell from the collapsed ground. Under the huge cubic space, it was not solid, but suspended in the air. Everyone was falling down. At the same time, huge rocks were falling from above. Everything was developing in an extremely bad direction. Chapter 2641. Arthur Alberta Haber finally saved 7 or 8 people. In fact, he only wanted to save Varian marks, and the others were just saved in passing. Below was a huge karst cave, and the space was larger than the cube above. Thousands of meters below, there was a huge magma lake. Arthur Alberta Haber threw the people he saved on his back, and found a rock floating on the magma lake to stop. At this moment, the terrifying grayish-red figure was descending from above unhurriedly. Arthur Alberta Haber showed fear at this moment. Varian Marks looked at the huge body that protected her under her body with some confusion. She had never been protected by a dragon. In the past, she would only kill a dragon. And the giant dragons she encountered would only kill her. No dragon would protect her voluntarily. However, at the moment when she fell, she clearly felt that Arthur Alberta Haber was looking at her. Jane Fankel was also one of the people who were saved. At this moment, she was still in shock. At that moment, she almost thought she was going to die. She saw with her own eyes that many people fell into the magma lake from above. They didn't even have the chance to scream. At this moment, Refra suddenly found that the interference of the phone had disappeared. The collapse above seemed to have destroyed the source of interference. Haber Timur Haber unscrupulously released the terrible dragon's power. Arthur Alberta Haber trembled under Haber Timur Haber's dragon's power. It was too powerful. Haber Timur Haber didn't even need to make a move directly. Even just relying on the dragon's power could kill him. Is this still the pride of being regarded as a genius by father? Haber Timur Haber looked at Arthur Alberta Haber mockingly. The current you is just like an ant in front of me. As long as I think about it, you will be crushed by me. From now on, I will destroy and tear all your pride and confidence little by little. Arthur Alberta Haber lowered his body, but he still tried to raise his head. He opened his mouth and let out 2 dragon roars. Haber Timur Haber transformed into human form. Under absolute power, even if he was only in human form, he was still countless times stronger than Arthur Alberta Haber. Let me show you my new magic! Haber Timur Haber raised his right arm. Just then, lava tentacles suddenly stretched out from the lava lake around them. The lava tentacles wrapped around Arthur Alberta Haber's wings. After the silver dragon scales were burned by the lava, they were charred black. Arthur Alberta Haber couldn't even avoid Haber Timur Haber's firebird. This was the difference between dragon kings and those below them. Even numbers couldn't make up for such a huge gap. First, your daughter. Haber Timur Haber looked at Varian Max. Varian's expression changed. Varian, how long has it been since we last saw each other? Haber Timur Haber grinned and looked at Varian Marx mockingly. Has it been 100 years? Let me remember. Sorry. I really can't remember. At that time, the last time we saw each other, you were trembling in front of me, remember? Varian's expression was one of shock and bewilderment. She was still immersed in what Haber Timur Haber had just said. Arthur Alberta Haber was her father? How was this possible? Arthur Alberta Haber suddenly broke free from the magma tentacle's restraint. He suddenly rushed towards Haber Timur Haber. Shut up, bastard! Hee. Haber Timur Haber's finger pressed down gently. In an instant, Arthur Alberta Haber was pressed down on the rock. At this moment, 2 figures that looked like giant dragons slowly landed in front of Haber Timur Haber. One was 7 or 8 meters long and looked like a big lizard with wings. The other still retained its human form, but it also had a pair of dragon wings. Master. The 2 figures were Old Max and Caesar Max. Haber Timur Haber looked at the 2 of them. Very good, you did very well, Haber Timur Haber said. Doing my best for Master is what I should do. As a reward for you, before I give you the reward, you can make a request that doesn't conflict with the reward I want to give. Master, I want. Caesar Max couldn't wait to speak, but he was interrupted by Old Max. Master, I don't need a reward. I just want to be able to continue serving you. Old Max was, after all, a shrewd old man. Of course, he wouldn't be so loyal and generous to give up the reward. He just wanted to make his attitude clear. Haber Timur Haber laughed. Very good, very good. I like people like you. Old Max lowered his head even more, while Caesar Max looked at his father with a bit of dissatisfaction. Old Max lowered his head and glanced at Caesar Max out of the corner of his eye. This idiot. All right. In that case, as a reward, I've decided to make you a part of me. Old Max and Caesar Max looked at Haber Timur Haber with puzzled eyes. Master. I don't understand. Father, brother, run! Jane Fankel screamed at the top of her lungs. Run? Why? Old Max and Caesar Max didn't understand what Jane Fankel meant by that. But in the next moment, the two of them felt as though something was trying to break through their bodies. The first was Caesar Marx. A bowl-sized hole suddenly appeared in his chest. A large amount of blood burst out of his chest and gathered in front of him. Old Max followed closely behind. His huge body caused him to suffer even more pain. A large amount of blood burst out of his chest and gathered in front of him. Why? Why? Old Max roared with the last of his strength. Why? It seems that you are far less intelligent than your daughter, Halbert Timor Haber said with a mocking tone. I once told you that what I left in your bodies is a seed. What is the purpose of planting the seed? Of course, I hope that one day it can bloom and bear fruit, and then I will collect the fruit. You lunatic! Arthur Alberta Haber growled. Their strength is nothing to you. Chapter 2642. I never waste any bit of power. That's my strength. Halbert Timor Haber smiled. He watched as the two balls of blood, one big and one small, came in front of him. He gently caught them with his palm and absorbed them. He liked this feeling very much. He had even become addicted to it. However, it was not easy to cultivate descendants. It was too troublesome for dragons to reproduce. He had spent most of his time breeding or on the way to breeding. But there were not many who really succeeded. Jane Fankel looked at her two closest relatives who had fallen into the magma. She had collapsed and knelt on the ground. Halbert Timor Haber looked at Jane Fankel and grabbed at her through the air. At that moment, Zephyr made her move. Zephyr pulled Jane Fankel over and threw out a dragon blood grenade at the same time. This dragon blood grenade was made from the blood of dragons. In a sense, the dragon blood grenade was a magic weapon of the dragon ascension. Of course, it was more like a modern thermal weapon. After all, the principle was the same. It was just that dragon blood was added. And the dragon blood added to the dragon blood grenade was actually not real dragon blood. After all, that thing was very precious. Even the Dragon Slayer organization would not use dragon blood to make a high-consumption dragon blood grenade. Halbert Timor Haber stood where he was. He could completely avoid the dragon blood grenade. But he had no intention of doing so at all. The dragon blood grenade exploded on his body. In an instant, the dragon blood grenade exploded with a crimson flame impact and instantly shrank. A large pit several meters deep was left on the ground. However, after the explosion of the dragon blood grenade subsided, Halbert Timor Haber stood there unscathed. Halbert Timor Haber looked at Zephyr with a playful gaze. Do you like to play like this? Then let's play. Halbert Timor Haber took a piece of dragon scale from his arm and threw it away. The dragon scale turned into a dragon beast. Arthur Alberta Haber's expression changed. What kind of magic was this? Summoning magic? No, this dragon beast had the aura of Halbert Timor Haber. It was not summoned from other places. It was a part of Halbert Timor Haber. But, how did he do it? Turning a scale into a dragon. Generally speaking, the offspring of the dragon clan and other species were called half-dragons, which meant that they were the descendants of the dragon clan. The half-dragon would then interbreed with other creatures to give birth to draconic beasts. Most of the dragons were very powerful, although it was definitely not comparable to the dragon race. But compared to the vast majority of creatures, dragon beasts were already invincible. Jevra did not think so. She took a step forward as if she was going to face the dragon alone. Varian Marx pulled Jevra back. Don't worry, Zephyr said calmly. Varian looked at the Cyclops, and then at Zephyr. In the end, she could only say one word. Be careful. Zevra bent over and drew out her pair of daggers. The daggers were hidden in her boots. Throughout the journey, Zephyr had never used it. Halbert Timor Haber looked like he was watching a show. At first Jevra's footsteps were just a stroll. But gradually, her speed became faster and faster, and in the end, it became a sprint. The daggers were placed in front of her and behind her. The dragon suddenly leaped forward, opening its mouth and pouncing towards Zevra. Zevra's figure changed. She leaped high into the air, somersaulted in midair, and stabbed the daggers in her hands down. Ding! Sparks flew, but the dragon was unharmed. Zevra's reaction was also very fast. After her attack failed, she immediately retreated. However, the dragon chased after her and swung its tail. "Be careful!" Varian Marx exclaimed. Zevra was in a dangerous situation. If the dragon swung its tail hit her, she would probably be smashed into meat paste. Just then, Zevra crossed the two daggers in front of her. When the dragon swung its tail, Zevra used the flexibility of the daggers to retreat even faster. Zevra's feet kept retreating on the ground, and she finally stopped. What amazing combat skills! She actually withstood such a heavy attack! Varian exclaimed in astonishment. What she did not know was that Zafra had only recently developed her fighting skills. She was able to develop this combat skill because she had an imaginary enemy. And this imaginary enemy was Qinzhao. The development process was even smoother than she had imagined. Together with this pair of specially made weapons, Zevra could easily defeat an enemy. Although it was her first time using this combat skill with the daggers, it was shockingly effective. Zevra moved her shoulders. Her muscles and bones started to relax. Haber Timur Haber raised an eyebrow. It seemed that the little girl did not use her full strength. She seemed to still have some leeway. Haber Timur Haber did not intend to interfere. He watched Zevra's next performance with interest. This time, the dragon attacked first. Zevra moved and charged at the dragon. Amidst the lightning and thunder, the dragon's right eye was suddenly pierced by Zevra. Zevra, on the other hand, avoided the dragon's huge body in the blink of an eye. The dragon howled in pain. It turned around and spat a mouthful of saliva at Zevra. However, this attack could not even reach Zevra's shadow. Zevra flashed again and appeared under the dragon's abdomen. The dragon was still wondering where Zevra had gone. Zevra's two swords had already cut open the dragon's abdomen. The battle ended with Zevra's easy victory. Clap, clap, clap. Haber Timur Haber clapped his hands. Beautiful, what a beautiful combat skill! There's a dragon called the Combat Master among the dragons. I suspect that you're his descendant. Zevra wiped away the blood on her sword and pointed at Haber Timur Haber. Haber Timur Haber looked at Zevra. You don't think that your skill will work on me, do you? Zevra calmly looked at Haber Timur Haber and shook her head. If that's the case, why are you pointing your sword at me? Are you going to fight me to the death? Zevra shook her head again. I just want to tell you that my boss is here. Your boss? Who's your boss? The leader of the Dragon Slayer organization? Haber Timur Haber asked in confusion. He was not the only one confused. The others were confused as well. Varian's face was full of greetings. The leader of the Dragon Slayer organization? That guy did not seem powerful and was very short. Would he dare to come? Chapter 2643. Thud, 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 the loud sound came from above. It was like a pile driver pounding the ground. At first, it was a bit light, but the next time, it would be heavier, heavier, heavier. More rocks began to fall from above. It was as if a pile driver was really working on it. Bang! Suddenly, a hole appeared in the cubic ceiling above. Then, a figure descended from the sky. Everyone looked at the figure and realized that it was an Asian man holding a round pig. Seeing Qinzhao, Jane Fankel had a strange expression. Wasn't that Qinzhao? To be honest, her appearance here was largely related to Qinzhao. Boss! Zephyr called. Everyone froze. Boss? Was this guy Zephyr's boss? Qinzhao nodded and scanned the scene. Which side is the enemy? Which side is on our side? Qinzhao asked. Or are both dragons enemies? Zephyr glanced at Arthur Alberta Haber and said, He's on our side, at least for now. So, this guy is the enemy? Qinzhao pointed at Haber and asked, You're the leader of the dragons? I'll soon become the leader of the dragons, Haber said confidently. Haber Timur Haber said confidently. Human, you better show me some respect. That way, I will forgive your sins after you die. Sorry, Qinzhao said, relaxing. I've killed a lot of dragons, so it's hard for me to show some respect to an unfamiliar dragon. Haber Timur Haber's face darkened, and his finger pressed down. Instantly, a terrifying dragon's might pressed down on Qinzhao's face. A huge pit instantly appeared in the ground around Qinzhao. However, Qinzhao hovered in place. Even the round pig in Qinzhao's arms was unharmed, let alone Qinzhao. Qinzhao also raised his finger and pointed at Haber Timur Haber. A small black ball appeared before his finger. Pop! Haber Timur Haber's entire body was sent flying, crashing into a rock wall in the distance. It really isn't the Dragon King, Qinzhao muttered to himself. I heard that the Dragon King is powerful, but this guy is too weak. However, Qinzhao's words made everyone speechless. Weak? This guy said that Haber Timur Haber was weak? In what way did he know that Haber Timur Haber was weak? Jane Fankel did not expect Qinzhao to be so powerful. Don't be careless, human. Your attack has no effect on him, Arthur Alberta Haber said seriously. Silver Dragon, are you an ice elemental? That doesn't seem to be the case. I once killed an ice-type silver dragon, but I didn't feel any chill from your body. Are you interested in becoming part of my collection? Arthur Alberta Haber's face darkened. He was speechless at the human in front of him. He suddenly felt that it would be better if Haber Timur Haber killed this guy. Roar! Haber Timur Haber jumped up from the rubble and instantly transformed into his dragon form. His body was close to 1,000 meters long, and he was covered in grayish-red patterns. There were also many pairs of dragon horns on his head, making him look even more sinister and terrifying. Arthur Alberta Haber's expression changed again. Both Haber Timur Haber's power and body were becoming stronger. I'm going to kill you! Human, I want! Kill! You! Dozens of magic formations of various sizes appeared around Haber Timur Haber. All of them pointed at Qinzhao. Every single one of the magic arrays was brewing a terrifying spell. Everyone's nerves were tense to the extreme. Some even blamed Qinzhao. After all, Qinzhao had only appeared for a minute. He had successfully angered Haber Timur Haber. This also made them face a more serious and dangerous situation. Qinzhao stood where he was and looked at Haber Timur Haber in the distance. You're weaker than I thought. Very well, then I'll show you my puny strength. Go to hell! In an instant, all the magic formations burst out with terrifying spells. Dozens of terrifying magic beams blasted at Qinzhao. However, when the magic beams were within 1,000 meters of Qinzhao, they began to visibly weaken. When they were within 100 meters, they had weakened to only 1/10 of their original power. When they reached Qinzhao, they were no more powerful than inferior fireball. Qinzhao laughed. Are you kidding me? Or did you not eat breakfast? Haber Timur Haber flew into a rage. His power had increased tenfold, but his IQ seemed to have increased in the opposite direction. Or rather, he had inflated. Using his huge body, Haber Timur Haber pounced at Qinzhao. In everyone's eyes, he was like a flying mountain. Haber Timur Haber's body might be 1,000,000 tons. The oppressive feeling brought about by the overwhelming aura made it difficult for everyone to breathe. At this time, Qinzhao also moved. Moreover, Qinzhao was much faster than Haber Timur Haber. Everyone felt their vision blur. Then they realized that Qinzhao had disappeared. The next moment, they saw Haber Timur Haber's lower abdomen cave in. His huge body fell down too, his back smashing heavily into the ground. Then, everyone saw Qinzhao appear above Haber Timur Haber. Haber Timur Haber was shocked. He wanted to climb up, but he realized that he was controlled by a terrifying power. Without hesitation, Haber Timur Haber spat out a mouthful of dragon breath at Qinzhao. The terrifying dragon breath traveled thousands of meters in an instant and swallowed Qinzhao. But the power controlling him didn't weaken. Roar! Haber Timur Haber screamed in pain. Everyone saw that Haber Timur Haber's left forelimb had been strangely torn off. Chen Zhao stood there unharmed. He was still holding Roundy with one hand. Right now, Chen Zhao was looking down at Haber Timur Haber with a condescending gaze. Among my many opponents, you should be the weakest. You seem to be very unfamiliar with your power. Everyone was speechless. Haber Timur Haber? The weakest? What was this guy's standard? However, at this moment, no one could raise any objections. Because Chen Zhao seemed to be one-sidedly beating Haber Timur Haber. 9 Heavens Divine Emperor. Chapter 2644. This wasn't because Chen Zhao was being arrogant. Or perhaps it was because he was humiliating Haber Timur Haber. He truly felt that Haber Timur Haber was very weak. Haber Timur Haber's aura wasn't weak. At the very least, he was considered average among the great lords Shi Feng had fought before. However, the strength he displayed was definitely an insult to Chen Zhao's power level. I'm going to kill you! Kill you! Kill you! Haber Timur Haber roared crazily. He'd obtained supreme power, but on the same day, he'd lost a claw. Terrifying magic power brewed inside Haber Timur Haber's body. I told you, you're too immature when it comes to using power. You shouldn't have brewed your magic power in front of the enemy. Chen Zhao waved his hand. Thousands of black balls appeared around him. Chen Zhao didn't even have to use his full strength. The thousands of black balls were like a bullet storm. They shot directly at Haber Timur Haber at an astonishing speed. These black balls weighed tens of thousands of tons. One could imagine how terrifying the power would be under such high-speed shooting. Thousands of small black balls shot out crazily. Haber Timur Haber actually didn't die. Chen Zhao was amazed by Haber Timur's tenacious vitality. Everyone was dumbfounded. Was this still the insufferably arrogant Haber Timur Haber? At the moment, Haber Timur Haber was covered in wounds. Haber Timur Haber didn't even have a chance to fight back. Chen Zhao still held Roundy in one hand and controlled the battle with the other. He controlled the entire situation. But for Zephyra, she only had one feeling. Chen Zhao had become stronger again. Haber Timur Haber didn't want to wait for death like this. He unleashed his dragon's might at full power. Chen Zhao's hand paused. All the black balls lost control and fell. Next, Haber Timur Haber opened his bloody mouth and bit at Chen Zhao in the sky. However, Chen Zhao dodged Haber Timur's attack at an even faster speed. Chen Zhao's lips curled into a smile. You're more like it now. Right now, Haber Timur's eyes were bloodshot as he stared at Chen Zhao with hatred. His strength increased again, and anger and madness caused his fusion with the ancient Dragon Ball to become even more radical. This was a good thing, but also not a good thing. The surrounding magma began to boil and gather towards Haber Timur Haber. A magma dragon claw grew out of Haber Timur Haber's severed limb. I'm no longer afraid of you. Haber Timur Haber moved his magma dragon claws. Chen Zhao smiled. You still have a lot of room for improvement. I am already strong enough. The lava was repairing his body. Even his uninjured skin was covered in lava. This was the power of a domain, completely different from the domains of the past. To be precise, his domain was replaced by this scorching hot domain. Not enough! Chen Zhao moved again. A punch pierced through Haber Timur's magma body. Haber Timur's huge body flew backward at a shocking speed. When it fell into the magma, it set off huge waves. The lava covering his skin didn't protect him at all. Even against Chen Zhao, the lava didn't have the desired effect. Suddenly, the lava lake exploded, and a terrifying lava dragon appeared in front of everyone. The dragon's upper body was already 3,000 meters long. Its entire body was probably over 5,000 meters long. Before the lava dragon, Chen Zhao was as small as an ant. This was definitely the largest enemy Chen Zhao had ever faced. There was no other. Tremble under my power! Haber Timur Haber roared. Everyone was completely shocked by the scene before them. Even Arthur Alberta Haber was no exception. Was there really anything in the world that could fight against such power? Chen Zhao was still calm. He turned to look at Refra. Help me hold it. With his hands free, Chen Zhao could finally put his heart and soul into the battle. To be precise, Chen Zhao had thought of a good idea. An idea that Chen Zhao had rejected. Zhang Ting had mentioned it to Chen Zhao before. However, Chen Zhao had rejected it back then. Chen Zhao didn't walk fast. He strolled toward the magma dragon. Haber Timur Haber seemed to think that he would definitely win. He wasn't in a hurry to attack. While he was displaying his power, he was also enjoying it. Such a powerful force brought him an unprecedented pleasure. Feel my anger! Haber Timur Haber raised his huge claw and slapped at Chen Zhao. Chen Zhao raised 2 fingers and swiped at the air. In an instant, Haber Timur Haber's claws separated from his huge body once again. The claw turned into lava and scattered, but Haber Timur didn't care. This was because there was enough lava here for him to repair his damaged body. Chen Zhao was just trying out a small part of it. He just wanted to see how effective this move was. He had to admit that this move was indeed quite effective. At least, it was effective against a newbie. Actually, this move was a modified version of Neutron Star. Originally, it compressed air into an extremely small volume. This move, which Chen Zhao had named Scalpel, was essentially Neutron Star. It was just that the shape was changed to that of a knife. Because it was mainly made of air, the knife couldn't be seen. Chen Zhao waved his hand lightly, and the magma dragon's head was cut off. However, it still didn't hurt Haber Timur Haber at all. The magma dragon's head grew back. It's useless. I'm immortal now. You can't kill me. Pfft. Chen Zhao couldn't help but laugh out loud. In the past, people had said that they were immortal before Chen Zhao. They'd all be ravaged by Chen Zhao and then slapped into the wall. Now, there were people saying such things. Especially people at Haber Timur Haber's level. Was he really a newbie? He actually dared to say such a stupid lie in such a solemn manner. What are you laughing at? Haber Timur Haber was like a mouse whose tail had been stepped on. He questioned Chen Zhao angrily. Next time you make up a lie like this, you have to hide your real body first. Don't hide under my feet and use a fake body made by magic to fool me. Divine King of the 9 Heavens. Chapter 2645. Haber Timur Haber's performance was indeed extremely stupid. He thought that by hiding in the lava, he could avoid Chen Zhao's senses. He used the huge lava body to deceive Chen Zhao's senses. On the other hand, the lava dragon was basically unkillable. He felt that he could just use the lava dragon to continuously consume Chen Zhao's power. That way, he would be invincible. Chen Zhao sneered. You still want to run now? Chen Zhao's power of the universe seeped into the lava. They caught Haber Timur Haber. Then, everyone saw Haber Timur Haber's huge body being dragged out of the lava. Haber Timur was astonished. The human before him was so strong that he didn't seem human. It was a completely unreasonable kind of power. Haber Timur Haber struggled to break free from the bindings. He used his strongest dragon's might to shatter the power that bound him. Chen Zhao also let go of the restraints. Trying to completely restrain an enemy of the same level with just the power of the small world was indeed wishful thinking. Chen Zhao was stronger than Haber Timur Haber. While Haber Timur was weaker than Chen Zhao, he wasn't much weaker. At least they were at the same level of power. Haber Timur lost more because he wasn't familiar with his own power. It wasn't just that he wasn't familiar with the power of a great lord. Haber Timur's control and use of power was something that even a normal lord would find difficult to achieve. He had created the lava dragon with his power. It did look mighty and extraordinary, but it was just an empty shell. Even if Chen Zhao stood there and let the lava dragon hit him, he might not even break a layer of skin. Haber Timur's performance was basically at the level of a middle school student who had gotten a master's degree. When he walked out, he told people that he had a master's degree. In the end, he was as fierce as a tiger. He wasn't even at the level of a high school student. At this level, he could only fool Arthur Alberta Haber, who was also a middle school student. In front of Qin Zhao, he would be beaten into a pig's head. After breaking free, Haber Timur Haber immediately flapped his wings and flew away from Qin Zhao's small world. Immediately after, Haber Timur's body shook violently, and the scales on his body started to fall. When those scales fell, they turned into dragon beasts in midair. The big ones were dozens of meters long, and the small ones were only a dozen meters long. Some could soar in the sky, while others fell directly into the magma. In an instant, Haber Timur Haber had created an army of countless dragons. Even Qin Zhao was dumbfounded. This method was similar to Huaxia's magic arsenal. However, quantity was useless in front of Qin Zhao. In a normal battle between great lords, no one would use such a method. Even if Shi Feng had an endless supply of troops, he wouldn't use them in a battle between great lords. No matter how many soldiers they had, they could not withstand a massacre by a great lord. But now, Haber Timur Haber had used such a stupid method. Even more stupid was that the dragon army was made from Haber Timur Haber's flesh and blood. To put it bluntly, Haber Timur Haber had created them with his own flesh and blood. It was a spectacular scene. The sky was filled with dragons. Qin Zhao twisted his neck and glanced at Haber Timur Haber. I suddenly don't want to kill you anymore. Be my breeding pig, and I'll keep you alive. How about that? Human! You're dead. I'll definitely kill you. Such words were a great insult to anyone, not to mention Haber Timur Haber, who had already become arrogant. When the 100,000 black balls appeared in the surroundings, both friend and foe were dumbfounded. The densely packed black balls were no weaker than the dragon army, especially Haber Timur Haber. Especially Haber Timur Haber. He had already experienced the power of those little black balls. Now that the countless black balls had appeared, he had a premonition that something bad was about to happen. In an instant, all the black balls shot out. The battlefield became a slaughterhouse. The black balls would die with one knock or become crippled with one touch. How could he fight? At that moment, Haber Timur Haber also felt that his move was stupid. The dragon army couldn't even attack Qin Zhao. They couldn't even get close to Qin Zhao's small world. The magma lake churned, setting off terrifying waves. However, this attack wasn't enough to kill Haber Timur Haber. Primordial Regression Technique, Level 2. Qin Zhao stomped on the ground. The ground he stepped on cracked instantly. Qin Zhao shot out like a fleeting shadow. In a thousandth of a second, Qin Zhao had pierced through Haber Timur Haber's abdomen and shot out from his back. At the same time, a dragon ball appeared in his hand. Haber Timur Haber was still in a daze. The result was already out. He turned back to look at Qin Zhao and his dragon ball. He reached out with his claws, trying to grab Qin Zhao. He wanted to take back his dragon ball. However, his body continued to fall. At this moment, everyone was silent. The insufferably arrogant Haber Timur Haber had finally been defeated. Suddenly, Qin Zhao grabbed Haber Timur Haber, who was about to fall into the lava lake. The body of the Dragon King was a good thing. How could Qin Zhao let go of Haber Timur's body? But at that moment, an unfamiliar yet powerful aura appeared without warning. Qin Zhao immediately felt that Haber Timur's body was being pulled by another force. Qin Zhao saw a shadow appear in front of him. He was 100 meters away from Qin Zhao. At the same time, one of his hands was grabbing at Haber's body. Although the shadow's aura was very faint, Qin Zhao could still vaguely feel it. Another giant dragon. And a dragon king too. Father! Arthur Alberta Haber exclaimed. Arthur Alberta Haber didn't expect his father to come as well. Or rather, he had always been here. You want to steal my spoils of war? Or do you want to be my spoils of war too? Human, he's my child. The Dragon King's tone was somewhat angry. I don't care whose son he is. I only know that he's my spoils of war. Do you want humans to start a war with dragons? Do you? Qin Zhao wouldn't be threatened. He was just a nobody among humans, But the other was the leader of the dragons, so he could say whatever he wanted. Would the other dare? Jiutian Divine Emperor. Chapter 2646. Of course, the Dragon King didn't want to start a war. The dragons didn't have the advantage in the first place. Now, such a monster had appeared among the humans. Even he wasn't sure if he could defeat Qin Zhao. So if a war really started, then the dragons might really be wiped out. Maintaining the current situation was beneficial to both the dragons and humans. Threats were fine, but it was impossible to start a real war. For beings of their level, any threat was meaningless. Unless he could truly be free from all attachments. The Dragon King stared at Qin Zhao. He seemed to be trying to force Qin Zhao with his eyes. Unfortunately, he was the one who compromised in the end. Although he was very unhappy that his child's body was taken as a trophy. But as the leader of the dragons, he couldn't be stubborn to the end. Of course, in the end, it was still because he wasn't strong enough. Strength was the most important factor in judging each other. If he was strong enough, it would be nice even if the other's words were bullshit. If he wasn't strong enough, then compromise was the only choice. For example, the situation the Dragon King was facing now. The Dragon King glanced at Arthur Alberta Haber and said, "Come back with me." The Dragon King was really afraid that Qin Zhao would kill his last son too if he was too careless. Arthur Alberta Haber glanced at various marks behind him. He pursed his lips but didn't say anything in the end. The Dragon King didn't care if Arthur Alberta Haber was willing or not. He waved his hand and an unpredictable chain shot out from his hand. It wrapped around Arthur Alberta Haber's neck and then pulled hard. Arthur Alberta Haber's body also followed into nothingness. Qin Zhao didn't stop Arthur Alberta Haber from leaving. After all, he could tell friend from foe. Then the Dragon King and Arthur Alberta Haber disappeared before Qin Zhao's eyes. Qin Zhao didn't know how they left. But thinking about it, a dragon leader who had been a leader for thousands of years must have a lot of tricks up his sleeve. At least he wasn't a dabbler like Haber Timur Haber. Qin Zhao glanced at Haber Timur's huge corpse. With a wave of his hand, he put Haber's corpse away. Then he looked at Refra and the others. "I'll send you out." Everyone felt their bodies lighten, and then they floated up. At first, it was quite novel. But then, the feeling didn't feel good. Qin Zhao would never consider the feelings of the passengers. So, when Qin Zhao sped up, they felt quite uncomfortable. The powerful air pressure directly squeezed and deformed the skin on their faces. Moreover, Qin Zhao had created an even bigger hole in it. He returned to the surface in the most barbaric way possible. When everyone returned to the ground again, everyone had a surreal feeling. Especially Jane Fankel. She did not expect the Asian she had interacted with before. He actually had such a terrifying side to him. She had originally thought that Haber Timur Haber was the most terrifying existence. But when Qin Zhao appeared, Haber Timur Haber was like a child before Qin Zhao. He was beaten up and humiliated. Haber Timur Haber seemed really weak. But everyone knew that Haber Timur Haber was very powerful, so powerful that it made people's hair stand on end. However, Qin Zhao's power was dominating. He was unreasonably strong. Jane Fankel thought of her father and brother. They had even provoked Qin Zhao before. If they died now, Qin Zhao would probably kill them with a slap. Qin Zhao looked at Refra and took the round ball from her hands. "After you're done with your personal matters, hurry back. I still have many things to do. Portia can't handle them all by herself." "Got it, boss. Then I'll go back first." With that, Qin Zhao disappeared into the night sky. Everyone heaved a long sigh of relief, as if they had just woken up from a dream. Even Varian had mixed feelings at the moment. Qin Zhao looked easygoing, but she felt that he was like a volcano. He was a human who dared to go against the Dragon King. He was far more dangerous than any of the giant dragons. The next day, Refra and Portia came to work together. Qin Zhao was a bit surprised that Refra came back so early. "Refra, you didn't rush back overnight, right?" Qin Zhao asked. There's a flight to L.A., so I came back on the way. I thought you needed a day or two off. It's a festival in your hometown, Refra said. Okay, Qinzhao said. I have a lot of things to do at home today. I need to prepare clothes for the kids. In some aspects, Qinzhao was more traditional. Even though he was in a foreign country, he still followed Chinese traditions. He had been abroad for more than 2 years and 3 Chinese New Years. He didn't miss any of them because of other reasons. He didn't buy firecrackers that could go off in the tens of thousands, but he did get some that could go off in the thousands. Also, no one would care if he set them off in his own territory. Kids loved to set off firecrackers. Even foreign kids were no exception. This was because firecrackers could stimulate their senses and vision. Although they were a bit scared, the boys still gathered their courage to light the firecrackers. Qinzhao even gave them some firecrackers for fun. Since it was New Year's Eve, the more lively the better. Qinzhao prepared a lot of food and beer in the yard. Drinking beer in February was definitely not bad. Qinzhao didn't want to have a reunion dinner like in China. He wanted to have a reunion dinner, but he wanted a more relaxing way. The kids were playing with firecrackers. When they were tired, thirsty, or hungry, they would come over to eat something. Then they would continue playing. Then Clive, Ampa, and their kids arrived. Qinzhao had invited the whole family. He had also invited Murphy, Rebecca, Bant, Mary, and Ken. He had invited all the people in town who were close to him. Other than preparing red packets for his kids, he also prepared red packets for Clive and Ampa's kids. There wasn't much money inside, just 2 $20 bills. Too much wasn't suitable. Around $40. That was around $200 in China, less than $300. Clive and Ampa roughly knew Chinese customs, so they didn't let their kids reject Qinzhao's red packets. Then everyone sat together and chatted. The men went in groups, and the women went in groups. This lasted from the afternoon until it was almost midnight. Then everyone left one by one. Qinzhao also let Refra and Portia go back after a busy day. Chapter 2647. Before and after the New Year were 2 completely different feelings. Before the New Year, he felt like he had a lot of things to do. But after the New Year, he felt like everything had disappeared. He just lay there doing nothing every day. Qinzhao believed that he wasn't the only one who felt this way. It seemed like every Chinese had the same feeling. Of course, Qinzhao would enter the river diagram to cultivate every day for different lengths of time. As the small world continued to be refined, Qinzhao felt that it had gone through a complete transformation. The growth and power level was nothing now. Qinzhao was now more than 10 times stronger than before he started cultivating the small world. This kind of improvement couldn't make Qinzhao happy anymore. What really excited him was that the small world seemed to be growing in a certain direction. But that feeling couldn't be described with words. It was that kind of conjecture and specious feeling. This kind of growth didn't come from an instant epiphany. It had to be accumulated over a long period of time. Moreover, it couldn't be done in a day or 2. To put it bluntly, even after Bifla, Zhangtiani, and the 23rd Blood Mary activated their small worlds, they might not have enough time to refine them. This slow speed made Qinzhao speechless. Even in the river diagram, Qinzhao still felt that the speed was 1,000 times faster. Compared to the continuous increase in his combat power, Qinzhao cared more about the growth of the small world. In the past, Qinzhao had never actively cultivated. Most of the time, he just passively increased his power. But now, Qinzhao was looking forward to the growth and changes of the small world. Qinzhao had a feeling that if the small world improved, there would be a very special change. "Hey Zhang, what's up?" Qinzhao was meditating by the lake when he received Zhang Tianyi's call. It was called meditation, but he was actually daydreaming. These days, Qinzhao was really bored to death. Before the New Year, Alex would call Qinzhao many times a day. But recently, there hadn't been a single call. Qin Zhao didn't know if Alex had picked the right time to make things difficult for him. When are you coming back? In a few days. You're not coming back earlier? Why would I go back earlier? I'm not going to make it through the Spring Festival. Actually, the Spring Festival traffic has eased a lot in the past 2 years. Ha! Qin Zhao did not believe it. It was a slogan from 20 years ago. The pressure of the Spring Festival had not decreased. Instead, it had increased year by year. This was a dividend brought about by the country's population, but at the same time, it also brought about a burden. Unless the various types of transportation in the country increased by 3 times, the pressure would still be the same. I said to wait for a few days. It's only a few days. Why are you in such a hurry? I just miss you. Bullshit. Qin Zhao answered the call and studied the sparkling lake. No one knew what he was thinking. You really don't plan to return to China soon? Why do you have to make life difficult for these few days? Isn't it just a few days? Won't it be over after you sleep? Get lost. How many days do you need to sleep? Anyway, I'm just going back to my country to have some fun and visit some scenic spots. You're urging me to go back, so you must have some hard work to do. Anyway, you better give up on this idea. I won't help you with any hard work. My Great Dragon Tiger Mountain is a national special tourist attraction. It's enough for you to play. Even if you want room service, I'll arrange it for you. You get lost too. You really don't plan to come back early? To tell you the truth, I've booked a plane. The flight is next Friday. I've already paid the deposit. If you help me pay the deposit, I'll go back early. How much? $2 million. Fuck off. Come back whenever you want. Zhang Tianyi hung up. Fuck off. You hang up as soon as we talk about money. So practical. Qin Zhao cursed and put the phone away. Because there were quite a lot of people returning this time, Qin Zhao's whole family was out. This was why Qin Zhao planned to book a private plane back. Plus, there were so many kids to take care of, so Vara and Portia had to come too. 2 days before the return, Qin Zhao got busy again. There were more than 20 suitcases of various sizes. Although they were only going out to play, they brought quite a lot of things. On the day of their return, Qin Zhao's family went to the airport in a grandiose manner. After boarding the connecting flight, the kids started to make a ruckus. To them, this place was like home. When the plane was about to take off, the stewardess calmed them down for a while. For the flight attendants of this flight, it was simply a flight to hell. When the stewardess was on a mission, the thing they were most afraid of was kids on the plane. However, there were only a few adults on this flight. The rest were all kids. However, they couldn't afford to offend these kids. After all, if their parents could charter the plane, it meant that their parents were rich. Just then, Qin Zhao received a call from Zhang Ting. Qin Zhao had already switched to the satellite phone, so he could use it even on the plane. Boss, are you on the plane? Yes, we're on the plane, Qin Zhao said. Okay, I'm only going back to play. No need to trouble you. Have a good New Year. Boss, I've been cooped up at home for more than 10 days. I'm being urged to get married every day. Please pity me. Zhang Ting purposely sounded pitiful. Actually, it wasn't that she had to work. Even if she didn't want to stay at home, she could go anywhere. In fact, she had the awareness of an employee. Her boss was coming back to play. As his number one trusted employee, if she didn't accompany him, she might be replaced. Okay. If you really want to come, then come. But I won't pay you during the holidays. Boss, doesn't that count as overtime? Then you should stay at home for the blind date. Qin Zhao joked with Zhang Ting for a while. After telling her the estimated arrival time of the flight, he hung up. Both Zhang Ting and Portia were Qin Zhao's employees, but their work attitudes were completely different. Portia only treated it as a job. She was Qin Zhao's employee. On the other hand, Zhang Ting had the awareness of becoming Qin Zhao's trusted employee. Under normal circumstances, there was no difference between the two. They were both doing their jobs within their scope. But there were differences. Simply speaking, anyone could do Portia's job. For example, Zephyr could even do it better. Zhang Ting was different. While she was doing her job, she could also help Qin Zhao complete tasks outside of her job. Of course, Qin Zhao didn't need Portia to change. At least within her job scope, it was enough for her to do her own job. Chapter 2648. Yo, you look so pretty today. Are you going out to receive a guest? Zhang Ting didn't turn around. From the tone, she knew it was her best friend and roommate Yi Ziqing. Yi Ziqing always called herself a demoness and was used to speaking sarcastically. Yi Ziqing was also a top student in Shuimu and was the technical director of a listed company. The two had a lot of common topics. They lived together in an upscale apartment. The rent for this apartment wasn't cheap. It was 56,000 a month. Including property, utilities, heating, and other expenses, it added up to nearly 60,000 yuan. The two of them shared 30,000 a month. With such a high standard, it would be hard to maintain without a stable income. Yi Ziqing didn't even go home during the New Year. Zhang Ting only went back a few days before and after the New Year. My big boss is back in the country, Zhang Ting said. The big boss you said is rich enough to throw money at people? Yi Ziqing's eyes lit up and asked in surprise. Don't get any ideas. He has a family. He even has 2 children, Zhang Ting said. I'm not planning on seducing your big boss. I just want to see if he's interested in investing in any projects. I have a lot of good projects on hand, Yi Ziqing said. I'm just lacking rich people who have nowhere to spend their money. Yi Ziqing heard Zhang Ting mention her big boss before. During a trip abroad, this big boss spent millions of US dollars for her and his employees. He would send warmth to the company's employees every few days. In just a month, he had already sent out millions of US dollars. He closed his eyes to make decisions and casually mentioned an animation company that was worth hundreds of millions of yuan. Yi Ziqing had come into contact with many rich people. Even the top tycoons in the country had come into contact with a few. But she had never seen such a rich person. Are you going to the airport now? I'll go with you. No, you don't know him. Introduce him to me. We've been sisters for so many years. No. I feel like you're going to seduce my big boss. Think about it. Who paid for you back then when you didn't have money to pay rent? Think about it. When you were working overtime every day and night, who was the one who sent you supper? Think about it. Who helped you vent your anger when you were played by a scumbag? Okay. I'll take you there. Okay? Yi Ziqing was complacent as if her scheme had succeeded. Zhang Ting was already used to Yi Ziqing's temper. If they didn't get along, they wouldn't have shared a room for so many years. Shanghai Airport was even busier than Los Angeles International Airport. 2 years ago, Qin Zhao also boarded the plane at Magic City Airport when he left the country. More than 2 years had passed, but the Shanghai airport had not changed much. Qin Zhao and his family walked out of the arrival gate. From afar, they could see Zhang Ting waving a sign. Qin Zhao walked up. Long time no see. Boss, it hasn't even been a month. Alright, who is this? My friend Yi Ziqing. I'm afraid I can't carry the luggage by myself, so I called my friend over to help. With that, Zhang Ting looked behind Qin Zhao. There was a foreign woman so beautiful that she was stunned by her beauty. She carried 2 children in her arms, and behind her were foreign children of various sizes. Further behind them were 2 foreign women who were pushing a highly stacked luggage on a cart. Zhang Ting recognized one of them. Qin Zhao had brought Portia to meet her once when he traveled abroad. Also, she'd seen Portia a few times during their video calls. However, she hadn't seen the younger foreign woman. Hello, Miss Yi. Qin Zhao shook hands with Yi Ziqing. This is my wife, Fei Lai. They're my children. You've met Portia and Zhang Ting. Also, that's Refra. She's also my assistant, but she asked for leave. This time, she's coming back with me. Yi Ziqing was dumbfounded when she saw this big family. It was much, much bigger than she'd imagined. Thankfully, Jiang Ting was prepared. She knew that Qinzhao had a big business and a lot of family members. She'd also booked a floor of the hotel. Miss Yi, what company do you work at? I wouldn't dare to say that, Yi Ziqing said, smiling. I work at Xiangrong as their technical director. Qinzhao had never heard of this so-called Xiangrong company. However, from Yi Ziqing's tone, it should be a really cool company. Mr. Chen, do you plan to invest in China? Jiang Ting's current company is my investment. I mean business. Animation company is also business, right? Okay. Yi Ziqing understood that Qinzhao was trying to brush her off. It seemed that this man wasn't as brainless as she'd heard from Jiang Ting. At least, this man wouldn't reveal anything before knowing the exact situation. Mr. Chen, do you have any plans after coming back? Play. Qinzhao answered honestly. Yi Ziqing felt that she couldn't continue this conversation. In the past, she didn't need to bring up topics when she interacted with the rich. They basically couldn't leave their industry after 3 sentences. They'd talk about the current situation in 5 sentences. Or they'd find a good project or something. This was one of the basic qualities that allowed them to become rich. It was completely different from Qinzhao before her. Were all banana people so hard to communicate with? Yi Ziqing completely treated Qinzhao as a banana person. In reality, she didn't know that Qinzhao had only made it in 1 or 2 years. It wasn't a problem for Qinzhao to become one of the richest people. However, Qinzhao didn't have that kind of mentality. When they arrived at the airport, Didi helped take care of the siblings. The others were in charge of moving the luggage onto the bus. While they were moving the luggage, Jiang Ting came to Qinzhao's side and said, Boss, Yezi has some good projects. If you're interested, you can ask her. Okay. In fact, this was how the so-called network was built. When Qinzhao was in Los Angeles, he'd occasionally introduce himself like this. Although Jiang Ting only said 1 sentence, it was enough to help Yi Ziqing. After Qinzhao arrived at the hotel, Jiang Ting immediately arranged a meal for his family. Of course, since they just returned from abroad, their first meal had to be Chinese. The restaurant Jiang Ting chose was also very particular. First, it had to be high class. After all, Qinzhao's family couldn't go to a roadside restaurant. Secondly, the environment and location were all very meticulous. Jiang Ting, Miss Yi, it's my wife and 2 assistants' first time in China. Take them to the mall tonight. To be honest, they didn't really go shopping when they were abroad. It was mainly because the security abroad wasn't good. Unless Qinzhao was with them, even Fei Lai didn't dare to go out. Although the business district was bustling, once you left the business district, it was basically a blind spot for public security. Chapter 2649. The adults went to the mall, of course. The kids went to Disneyland. What was the best place to show how many people there were in China? One was the train station, and the other was the amusement park. The next day, Fei Lai, Portia, and Zephyr continued shopping. Qinzhao brought the kids to the amusement park. In China, Qinzhao really didn't need to worry about their safety. Apart from the fact that they were unfamiliar with the area, they had no other problems. Yi Ziqing also went shopping with Fei Lai and the others. She was a high-income person, but she was still shocked when she saw Fei Lai shopping. How did Fei Lai shop? When she saw something she liked, she didn't pick the color. Instead, she bought one of all the colors. She bought a Chanel handbag that cost more than 80,000. It was the same style, with 3 colors and patterns. Fei Lai bought 3 of them. The salesgirl was so happy that she was about to blossom. As for Zephyr and Portia, their expressions were as calm as the clouds in the wind. They both knew how much money Qinzhao could make. Even if Fei Lai tried her best, she probably wouldn't be able to spend all of Qinzhao's money in a day. Yi Ziqing was already a bit dizzy. Fei Lai had already spent 1 million yuan in just one store. Plus, the amount on her black card was frighteningly high. Of course, Fei Lai didn't just buy it for herself. She would also buy it for Chen Zhao and the kids at home. Occasionally, she would turn around and ask Zephyra, Portia, and Yi Ziqing if they liked something. Yi Ziqing really wanted to maintain her composure. But when she saw the prices and the luxuries, there were many things that she could only drool over. Those luxuries could almost buy a toilet in Shanghai. Thus, Yi Ziqing reluctantly accepted them. Fei Lai had already spent a few million yuan in one shopping mall. Yi Ziqing felt as if she had just experienced a soul-stirring battle. There was only one thought in her mind. Evil capitalists. A Lancome lipstick with 16 colors and one color series. They were all bought in one go. Was this something a human would do? The rich women she had met in the past didn't do this either. Fei Lai, there's a Baroness store over there. Do you want to go? Baroness? The Baroness's boss is Chen's good friend. Every season, their new designs will be delivered directly to our house. Chen's and my daily suits are all custom-made by their designers. Chen seems to have gotten some of the Baroness's shares a while ago, so he's her boss now. Yi Ziqing hissed as she felt a toothache. The more she knew, the more dizzy she felt. Baroness had just entered the Chinese market. However, because of the brand's reputation, it had already gained a certain status in the international market. Last year, the Baroness was ranked 16th on the list of luxury goods. This was mainly related to their market share. However, their sales ratio could be ranked in the top 3 of similar luxury goods. Baroness was currently a private property and not a listed company. However, its brand value had already become a golden asset. Yi Ziqing had a good understanding of international finance. A gold asset like the Baroness would definitely know better. He didn't expect Chen Zhao to be able to buy the Baroness shares. She did not know that Chen Zhao and the Baroness boss, Zola, were close friends. Moreover, there was an exchange of interests. Furthermore, Zola did not have a lot of cash. She also did not want the shares to fall into the hands of strangers. Instead of selling to strangers, she might as well sell it to Chen Zhao. At least she knew Chen Zhao's background. Chen Zhao hugged little Larissa and Jerlin. As for the other children, they could do whatever they wanted. Chen Zhao's little world had been locking onto their positions. They could not run away. In fact, they could not even run out of the range of Chen Zhao's little world. Nevertheless, Chen Zhao had to admit that Huaxia was indeed the largest region in the spiritual world. Chen Zhao felt that there were at least 30 spiritualists in this amusement park. Of course, most of them came to play by themselves or with their families and children. Just then, Chen Zhao realized that one of the spiritualists seemed to have sensed something. It was a middle-aged man. He looked very tall and there was a little girl sitting on his neck. However, the middle-aged man seemed to be looking around, as if he was looking for something. Finally, the man's gaze landed on Chen Zhao. Chen Zhao really did not expect that someone would be able to discover his little world. When the man saw the child in Chen Zhao's arms, he was stunned. Then, the man calmed himself down and walked over. Hi, did you cast the sensing spell just now? Yes, did it affect you? Sir, that's not good, the man said. Your actions will affect many people in public. Sorry, my children are scattered in the amusement park. I was afraid that they would get lost, so to ensure their safety, I used a sensing spell. It seemed that the man had sensed Chen Zhao's little world with his sharp senses. He did not really discover the existence of the little world. Nevertheless, Chen Zhao had to admit that the man was quite skilled. At least, Chen Zhao could feel that the man's cultivation was very high. The magic rippling from him was even stronger than Norma, Halley's, and Jalanash, who were the strongest in the supernatural organization. Was this the spiritual world of Huaxia? Chen Zhao had encountered such a powerful person in an amusement park. You're sensing me again? Who are you? How come I don't know you at all? The middle-aged man quietly took 2 steps back. For some reason, he felt a bit creeped out when facing this young man. I'm a returnee. Chen Zhao grinned. I married a foreign woman. The middle-aged man glanced at Chen Zhao's 2 mixed-blood children. He actually believed Chen Zhao. No wonder I've never heard of you in China, the middle-aged man said. Then you have to follow some local rules. I only came into contact with the spiritual world overseas, so I don't really know the local rules. I see. How about we find a place to sit? The middle-aged man asked. Sure, wait a moment. I'll call them back. Chen Zhao nodded. At the same time, he sent a signal to his children, telling them all to come over. The middle-aged man looked at the foreign children surrounding Chen Zhao. You're not a nanny overseas, right? They lost their parents, so I adopted them, Chen Zhao said casually. Let's go. There's a roadside restaurant. Let's sit there. Chapter 2650. While talking to the middle-aged man, Qin Zhao found out that his name was Wang Hai. Qin Zhao carried little Larissa while the other kids ran around and played in the open-air restaurant he'd booked. Xiao Chun, can I call you that? Of course. Xiao Chun, what system are you in? Me? I'm more inclined towards strengthening. I learned some Western spells overseas, but I'm not good at them. Wang Hai reached out and pinched Qin Zhao's arm. Smiling, he said, Strengthening isn't good in China. Why? Enhancers are more suited for martial arts. They aren't popular in the spirit world. There are too many spells in the spirit world that can restrain enhancers like you. Moreover, in the spirit world, enhancers are almost completely excluded. Chen Zhao rubbed his nose. Was he excluded from the spiritual world just like that? But is your perception spell also Western? Nope, Chen Zhao said. My foundation is Taoism. That doesn't count. Qin Zhao had previously received the legacy of Qingyi sect, and the cultivation method of Qingyi sect had also helped him a lot. However, the Qingyi sect was still a bit weak and basically couldn't help Qin Zhao anymore. Of course, Qin Zhao still admitted that he was from the Qingyi sect. Qin Zhao had entered the Qingyi sect, but it had always been passed down from generation to generation. Qin Zhao had also joined the sect with skills. Normally, he couldn't be considered a disciple. Del should be a true Qingyi disciple. Qin Zhao was more like a guardian elder of the Qingyi sect. Qin Zhao's cultivation was high enough, and he was trusted by Li Qing. He wouldn't covet the Qingyi sect's techniques or take them for himself. Therefore, Li Qing gave Qin Zhao the identity of a guardian elder. Actually, the Qingyi sect only had 1 or 2 descendants now. They didn't care about disciples, leaders, or guardian elders. Chen Zhao could become a guardian elder with just a word from Li Qing. No one agreed or disagreed. It was like a shell company. Then the boss would appoint someone. Qin Zhao would be the company manager. This appointment was meaningless. Oh, your perception spell was a Taoist spell? Sort of. Your perception spell is impressive, but don't use it in public. Why? I'm not in anyone's way. Do you mind if people use pinhole cameras to spy on you? These are 2 different concepts, right? No, to the people of the spirit world, they are just a concept. Alright, I'll be careful. Also, pay attention to the 3 danties in the country. What are the 3 no's? Do not attack in front of ordinary people. Do not kill demons. Do not discuss the conflict between Buddhism and Taoism. Qin Zhao could understand the first 2, but he really didn't know that there was a conflict between Buddhism and Taoism in China. You can't make a move in front of ordinary people. This is a universal rule. Previously, during the Battle of Holy Glory, he had heard Zhang Qianni talk about the general situation of the spiritual world in the country. Demons were also members of the supernatural world and had a close relationship with the government. However, Qin Zhao had never heard of the conflict between Buddhism and Taoism in Huaxia's supernatural world. Is the hostility between Buddhism and Taoism in the country very serious? Although they appear to be harmonious on the surface, in reality, they are at loggerheads with each other. They even kill each other in private. Someone died? Qin Zhao asked, curious about the gossip. It's normal. Last time, during the Buddha Mother Conference in the capital, a group of Taoists came to provoke them. The 2 sides fought and 3 people died. Then there was the Immortal Seeking Conference in Tsingtao. Brother Wang, are you a Buddhist or Taoist? I'm nothing. I'm just an amateur like you. Back in the day, I encountered something unclean at home, and it made the whole village restless. Later, a beggar came and took care of that unclean thing. After that, I learned from that beggar for more than 2 years. A few years ago, the old beggar was getting old, and in the end, I sent him on his last journey. Wang Hai sighed. My cultivation is neither good nor bad. There are too many capable people in the spiritual world in the country. I've been here for more than a decade. Now I'm counting on her, Wang Hai said, carrying the child. This made Qin Zhao feel like some parents who wanted their children to fulfill their unfulfilled wishes. It seemed like they wanted their children to be successful, but it was actually an irresponsible shirking. Of course, Qin Zhao wouldn't say this out loud. At the end of the day, it was Wang Hai's own business. Xiao Chen, are you planning to come back to develop your career? Qin Zhao was about to speak when Wang Hai said, If possible, I'll stay abroad. Nowadays, as long as the cultivators from the spiritual world have some tricks up their sleeves and aren't scammers, they can make a name for themselves abroad. They also believe in cultivators like us abroad. The competition in the country is too fierce. Then why don't you go abroad? I want to, but I don't have any connections. It's easy, but I can't just stand on the streets. Wang Hai paused and said, Oh, there's an operation tonight. Are you interested in joining? What operation? Hanwang Mountain was dug up by a group of grave robbers 3 months ago. Several archaeological teams went in, but only one came out alive. But he was also crazy. Then, the higher-ups reported this matter to the paranormal organizations of all levels. Then, the paranormal organizations in the city assigned a task. Whoever can pacify the things in the ancient tomb of Hanwang Mountain can go and claim the reward. Hanwang Mountain? It's a mountain in the northern suburbs of Shanghai. It's empty, but the things inside are really fierce. It's said that an ancient spirit has revived. Last time, they organized a group of cultivators to clear out Hanwang Mountain, but they were defeated. Tonight's the second operation. Anyone can join? Basically, it's getting rid of evil for the people. Why can't you? As long as you're not a beggar, it's fine. Plus, you just came back from overseas. Let me take you to broaden your horizons tonight. No matter what Wang Hai was thinking, Qin Zhao was really interested. Qin Zhao really wanted to broaden his horizons. He planned to go play with Wang Hai. Qin Zhao treated Wang Hai to a meal and then returned to the hotel with the kids. At night, Qin Zhao planned to leave the kids with Portia and Remy and then go out to broaden his horizons. The two agreed to meet at midnight. At 11:30, Qin Zhao arrived at the agreed place. They were all modern people. It wasn't some wilderness, just a roadside stall. However, Qin Zhao noticed that Wang Hai was even earlier than him. Apart from Wang Hai, there were 2 other people, one tall and one short. They seemed to be a group. At the moment, the 3 were drinking beer and eating skewers. Brother Qin, you're here. Let me introduce you. These 2 are my old friends from Taihang Mountain in Jin Province. Zhou Yinan and Li Ke. Hello, Brother Qin. The short Li Ke held Qin Zhao's hand with both hands. Brother Qin, where are you getting rich now? Jiutian Shen Wang. Chapter 2651. Li Ke looked like a merchant on the street. His first reaction when he saw Qin Zhao was a professional smile and politeness. Of course, Qin Zhao didn't dislike this. After all, everyone had their own way of survival. The taller Zhou Yinan looked much more honest. Qin Zhao noticed that his hands were rough and not very clean. Zhou Yinan probably did some heavy work in a construction site. Both of them had good cultivation. After Wang Hai's introduction, the 3 got to know each other. Li Ke was a small merchant. His net worth was probably a few million. However, his cultivation method was passed down in his family. Although he'd been doing business these years, he hadn't slacked off in his cultivation. He often sparred with cultivators in the spiritual world. He also had his own circle. Zhou Yinan was also part of this circle. Among ordinary people, he was just a construction worker. His income was actually quite good among ordinary people. So, he didn't need anyone to pity him. Plus, he had a happy family and a peaceful life. Moreover, his sect could be considered a prestigious one, although it wasn't famous now. However, he was quite famous in the Jin province. Zhou Yinan also cultivated the 5 elements sex cultivation method, the 5 elements divination technique. Combined with his job, it was a good fit. It's about time. Let's go now. Qin Zhao glanced at the 3. You've all drunk. I'll drive. Okay, Brother Qin, you're smart. You drink and don't drive. Ha! In the car, they went straight to the suburbs. After a few turns, they entered a small village road. However, the car didn't enter the village. Instead, it drove into the mountains. In the end, the car broke down at the entrance of a valley. The road was too difficult to drive on. They could only get out and continue. There's too much yin qi in this mountain, Zhou Yinan said. There must be many ghosts here. They probably all escaped from the tomb. Qin Zhao didn't see any yin qi here. After all, he'd mostly dispelled the Western spiritual world. Qin Zhao only felt that it was a bit cold here. Everyone take a few of these talismans. Don't let the yin qi invade your body and ruin your cultivation. Qin Zhao reached out, but the talisman suddenly burst into flames as soon as it touched his hand. Everyone was stunned. Zhou Yinan looked deeply at Qin Zhao but didn't say anything. Little brother Qin, your yang energy is very strong. Even if the yin energy here was 10 times stronger, it would not be able to invade your body. You don't have to use these talismans. Oh, alright then. Qin Zhao guessed that Zhou Yinan must have seen something. It probably had something to do with the spontaneous combustion when he took the talisman. On the way up, Zhou Yinan was clearly avoiding Qin Zhao. Chen Haiquan pretended not to notice and continued walking behind Wang Hai, chatting and laughing. Li Ke and Zhou Yinan walked together. Li Ke seemed to notice something and asked in a low voice, Old Zhou, what's wrong with you? That kid didn't do anything to you. Why are you acting like a different person all of a sudden? Just now, when he took my true yang talisman, it suddenly combusted, didn't you see it? I saw it. Your true yang talisman was refined by you using yang fire. It contains a trace of true yang fire force. As you said, that kid's yang qi is heavy. The true yang fire force did not enter his body. It was directly released from the talisman. Do you remember the big incident in Huaxia 20 years ago? Yes, what about it? My master and I also participated in that incident, Zhou Yinan said. We were lucky enough to meet Celestial Master Zhang of Dragon Tiger Mountain. At the time, he had just experienced a demon-slaying battle. It's said that Celestial Master Zhang killed thousands of demons alone, but Celestial Master Zhang was still in high spirits. When he saw my master, he even came over to say hello. Only then did I know that my master and Celestial Master Zhang were old friends. Celestial Master Zhang even asked my master for a few true yang talismans, saying that he needed to disperse some of the evil blood qi on his body. What does that have to do with that kid? Li Ke asked, confused. It's said that after killing demons, there will be evil blood qi left on one's body. It will either dissipate gradually with time or be burned by true yang fire. When Celestial Master Zhang asked for the true yang talisman, it also combusted on its own, Zhou Yinan said in a low voice. At that time, Celestial Master Zhang also said that he killed too many demons in those days, and his body was actually contaminated with such a heavy blood aura that he didn't even need to activate the true yang talisman, and it actually ignited. It's possible that the kid had just killed some demons and ghosts. After all, he is also a cultivator. It's not surprising that he killed a few demons, right? Li Ke said with slight hesitation. In that big incident, my master gave a lot of true yang talismans. Basically, the stock that he had stored for decades was used up in that big incident. If others want to get true yang talismans, they all need to activate them. Only Celestial Master Zhang doesn't need to activate them, Zhou Yinan said. At that time, my master said that other people only have a little bit of evil blood qi, But Celestial Master Zhang's evil blood chi can directly scare away the most ferocious evil spirits and evil spirits. You mean, the evil blood chi on that kid surnamed Qin is comparable to that of Celestial Master Zhang? Probably even more, Zhou Yinan said. At the same time, he secretly glanced at Qin Zhao, who was far behind them. All in all, that kid isn't the kind person we thought he was. We don't want to hurt anyone, but we have to be careful. Li Ke had been in business for many years and was also a smart person. He had basically seen all kinds of people. He even had contact with demons. He also secretly looked back at Qin Zhao. I can't tell what this brat is capable of. Behind them, Qin Zhao and Wang Hai were chatting happily. Anyway, they were all bragging. Wang Hai was also very supportive. In his opinion, Qin Zhao was just bragging. How could he be familiar with a Hollywood director? It was a piece of cake for him to be the main character in a Hollywood movie. Wang Hai's face was full of envy and joy. He kept saying that he wanted to rely on Qin Zhao and suck up to him. Regardless of what he was thinking, at least his expression and tone were very good. I invested in that kidnapping. To be honest, if you don't have any connections, you can't invest in Hollywood movies even if you have the money. Brother Qin, you're the best. When can you introduce director Steven to me? He's not free. He's shooting a new movie right now. It'll probably be released next year. Do you know what the limit of this credit card is? How much? I don't know either. Anyway, the bank said that there's no limit. Qin Zhao really enjoyed this situation. He even felt like he was bragging. But the other party kept praising him and didn't want to expose his bragging at all. This was the benefit of talking to adults. They were all fake. Chapter 2652. After entering the Hanwang Mountain, the group slowed down a bit. It was the middle of the night, and this was a barren land. There was really nothing fun to do. There were also many mosquitoes. They couldn't chase them away fast enough. Only Qin Zhao wasn't disturbed by the mosquitoes. The mosquitoes couldn't wait to avoid him. However, the deeper they went into Hanwang Mountain, the stronger the cold air. Even mosquitoes couldn't move around in such an environment. At this moment, an extremely powerful aura approached them. Qin Zhao raised his eyebrows and stopped. What's wrong? I feel something coming. Qin Zhao pointed ahead seriously. It seems really strong. Huh? How do you know? Li Ke asked, somewhat doubtful. Brotherly, you don't know, but Brother Chen's perception spells are really good. He can even cover a place as big as the amusement park. Really? Li Ke raised an eyebrow. Zhou Yinan had been silent the whole time. He looked at Qin Zhao with a strange expression. Brother Chen's cultivation isn't weak. Don't look down on him. Wang Hai hadn't seen Qin Zhao fight, but he'd pulled Qin Zhao into the team. He naturally had to support him as much as he could. Soon, Qin Zhao realized that the powerful aura was actually hundreds of evil spirits. However, judging from their clothes, they were all evil spirits that had lived through the ages. They looked like palace maids in movies. They wore the same clothes, but their faces were ferocious and scary. Apart from Qin Zhao, everyone else was happy to see these evil spirits instead of being shocked. It's actually spirits, and there's so many of them. What's that? Qin Zhao asked, looking at the three, confused. Spirits? Don't they exist overseas? Wang Hai asked, turning his head. No. At least I haven't heard of them. You know, I haven't been in the spiritual world for long. Although they are also a type of evil spirit, their spirit bodies have been soaked in the spirit spring, so their spirit bodies are also contaminated with the spirit chi of the spirit spring. Although they are fierce, they are excellent materials for refining tools. Some cultivators even directly extract their spirit bodies and extract the spirit liquid from them. That thing can even prolong one's life. Wang Hai paused and glanced at Qin Zhao. But an enhancer like you won't be able to deal with spiritual enemies. If I get enough, I'll give you a few. Thanks, Brother Wang. Qin Zhao did not refuse. At this time, Nan, and Lika couldn't wait any longer. Even though there were many of them, their individual strengths were barely passable. Perhaps it would be a little stronger than the average evil spirit, but only a little stronger. Whether it was Wanhai, Nan, or Lika, they all had some real skills. Against hundreds of spiritual Buddhas, he was still able to handle the situation with ease. To be honest, this scene was indeed much better than that of the foreign spiritualists. Take the supernatural organization, for example. The supernatural organization before Chen Zhao became the president. At that time, the first batch of members had almost been wiped out several times when they surrounded an evil spirit community. In fact, the strength of spiritualists in North America was generally the same. As for the supernatural organization, they were the real antisocial ones. He believed that Wanhai, Nan, and Lika weren't ordinary people either. But they weren't the best either. Plus, he'd only been back for a day. He'd already met the three before him. This meant that the spiritualists in the country were all very strong. Wanhai claimed to be unorthodox. But his methods weren't normal at all. He gathered mana in his palms and kept slapping out strange runes. They looked like the hieroglyphs of the Shang dynasty. He also muttered, "Bind, break, destroy, break." The shapes of the runes didn't match what he was chanting, but the effect was quite similar. Nan was even more direct. He formed a seal with his hands and pointed at a group of spiritual Buddhas. Large amounts of black water shot out from between his palms. When the spiritual Buddhas came into contact with the black water, their bodies turned pitch black as if they'd been splashed with ink. He fell from the sky as if he was carrying a weight on his body. Lika didn't use any spells. Instead, he took out a gourd. "Come into my gourd," Lika yelled. A strong suction force appeared at the mouth of the gourd, sucking the spiritual Buddhas into it. Chen Zhao watched the battle before him and exclaimed. He'd completely become an outsider. None of the spiritual Buddhas approached him. He just stood where he was like a spectator. Chen Zhao realized that the spiritual Buddhas were afraid of him. Even though he didn't do anything, the spiritual Buddhas still avoided his side. They seemed to have sensed something from him. But Chen Zhao didn't take it to heart. Someone had already sensed the smell of blood on him in the past. Nan glanced at Chen Zhao. But he wasn't idle either. It was rare to see such a large number of spiritual Buddhas in 100 years. If he missed this chance, there might not be a next time. In just 20 minutes, the number of spiritual Buddhas was reduced by half. The remaining spiritual Buddhas seemed to be afraid too. They all scattered and fled. Wanhai, Nan, and Lika couldn't do anything to the escaping spiritual Buddhas. If they attacked first, the three would be happy to see it happen. To them, the spiritual Buddhas were just walking into a trap. It wouldn't take much effort to deal with them. But if the spiritual Buddhas wanted to escape, they could only watch and sigh. After all, there were too many spiritual Buddhas. They could also fly. This was the spiritual Buddha's only advantage. When everyone returned to Chen Zhao's side, they were all happy. It seemed that they had gained a lot this time. Lika patted his gourd. "Chen, what do you think of my gourd? There are more than 100 spiritual Buddhas in it." Lika's methods were extraordinary, but Nan and Wanhai weren't weak either. Wanhai took out a blank scroll and threw the spiritual Buddhas with runes imprinted on them onto the scroll. Then, they turned into pictures on the scroll. There were more than 100 spiritual Buddhas of different shapes and sizes. Nan condensed the spiritual Buddhas with the black water into a small black ball and stuffed it into his pocket. He didn't make a sound, but Chen Zhao saw that he was the one who had gained the most. "I'm impressed," Chen Zhao replied, chuckling. "Chen, don't be discouraged. I'll give you a few later." Wanhai patted Chen Zhao's shoulder, treating him like his little brother. "Brother Wang, these things aren't cheap on the market, right? You're my brother. Why bother? Actually, it's not impossible to find them on the market. It's just that there aren't many of them. One spiritual Buddha costs around 10 or 20,000 yuan. You're tuning into the Phoenix Knights YouTube channel. Don't forget to subscribe and join us on this journey to catch the most captivating stories.